Ladies and gents, boys and girls, welcome back. This is the Windup, SEC Unfiltered bi-weekly college baseball show, the best college baseball show on the internet. I am Chris Phillips. He is Harrison Fant. Happy Cinco de Mayo to all of those who celebrate, and we appreciate you all celebrating it with us here on this Monday as we react to and recap another wild weekend in the SEC Conference Weekend number 8, officially in the books. Guys, as always, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast where you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. And as always, we're powered by our friends over at FANDUEL. Visit FANDUEL.com/SECU to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. Once again, that's FANDUEL.com/SECU to get $200 in bonus bets today. This is the Windup, SEC Unfiltered's bi-weekly college baseball show. We are here breaking down, reacting to, and recapping everything that took place over the weekend, Conference Weekend number 8 on the diamond of the SEC. We'll also take a look at the midweek slate, and we'll discuss an array of topics pertaining to the league. As always, guys, I am Chris Phillips. Joining me, as he always does, my good friend Harrison Fant, helping me break it all down. Harrison, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time. I'm fired up to chat with you here on this Monday. We got a lot to get into because it was an electric weekend of SEC baseball. As Hoover gets closer, the postseason's creeping up on us, and that means the baseball's only heating up. What's up, man?
Chris, good to be here. There are two unknowns, I think, in the SEC. One, that Missouri is just going to continue to lose and maybe go 0-30 for the first time, I think, in SEC history. And two, that the weekend delivered, Chris, yet again in such, I think, grand fashion, just kind of wild fashion this week specifically that we'll get into for sure. But, I mean, man, Chris, it delivered this week for sure. And I know a lot of people around that watching cover college baseball are excited for it, and it's the gauntlet, and there's no better place than the SEC for baseball.
Yeah, it never doesn't deliver, Harrison. There's some weekends, I think, more so than others. This one's certainly a wild and wacky weekend. I mean, this was, dare I say, the weekend of the rain delay. I mean, I feel like almost every single series was weather impacted somehow. Obviously, there's a few that weren't that we'll get into in a second, but man, we had delays.
It was more than just weather impacts in the game.
We had weather, we had umpiring, we had all these different things that we'll obviously talk about, but tons to discuss, tons to get into. Guys, if you're watching us live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, we appreciate you. Leave us your questions, your comments. We will get into those at the end of the show today. But Harrison, with that being said, like I mentioned, Conference Weekend number 8 is in the books. It's crazy. We only have 2 more of these weekends, regular seasons. Let's savor them. But in the meantime, Harrison, let's dive right into this thing, and we will start with the lone Thursday through Saturday series. What we felt like going into the weekend was the series of the weekend, the Arkansas Razorbacks and the Texas Longhorns, as Arkansas sweeps hook 'em. Texas fans, come here real quick. Now you've been initiated into the SEC. You've been on the road. You've been humbled. Now you're initiated into the conference. Again, Texas falling in all 3 games. The Hogs pitching was dominant. Harrison, we felt like, maybe not you specifically, but a lot of us felt like it was a matter of when, not if, that Texas was going to run into some sort of roadblock like this. And I'll go ahead and get out ahead of this too, because I think a lot of Texas fans, obviously over the weekend, very disgruntled, very displeased with the way their team played. We'll get in the specifics of the series here in a moment. But I'm here to tell you this, Harrison. Texas fans, you're going to be okay. Like it's all right. Like, you would rather this show itself now and this happen now than in 2 or 3 weeks when a bad weekend like this would end your season. So it's never good to get swept, but I think at least there's some positives like, hey, we knew at some point, like even Kyle Peterson on the broadcast, which we love, KP, friend of the show. I mean, he even said it, because some people called me crazy and others crazy for insinuating this Texas team could lose or they could get cold or whatever. And I think they just ran into a great Arkansas team, which we'll talk about more in a second. But even KP said, the law of averages in this game would suggest Texas is due for a weekend where it doesn't all go their way. They were 19-2 in conference play coming in. Like, they were due for a weekend like this. I think being humbled like this can actually serve as a positive and a benefit for them Harrison, your thoughts on the weekend, what you saw from the Horns.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And you got to think, Chris, this was your first and biggest SEC series on the road against a ranked opponent. So like we knew that like, hey, like if there's an opportunity for it and when they're going to regress, it's in this situation against a desperate team in Arkansas to stop the bleeding and a team that's so talented on both sides of the ball, like the Razorbacks are, to play in front of Woo Pig at home at Baum Walker. I mean, this was the most, I don't want to say obvious, but just the biggest situation for it to happen because, like I said, they played Auburn at home. They played Georgia at home. They played LSU at home. So it makes sense, honestly, the timing. And you were big on the injuries. At some point, the injuries are going to pile up and it's going to affect you. It didn't happen last week, obviously. But, I mean, I'm not worried about Texas at all.
I'm worried about the pitching staff. I got it, like, from a standpoint of, like, and I know it's one weekend, but, man, like, when you're trying to win a national championship and you don't have your ace, we have a lot of time to talk about that because we're going to talk at Texas a lot in the postseason and what have you. But I am nervous of the pitching staff. I'm not going to lie. Like, it's just like I said last week. Like, I don't know how long you can just depend on the same 5 or 6 arms and expect to ride.
That's the thing.
That
it's more so a depth question for me than it is a talent, because the talent's there. It's just, guys that they've relying on the same 5, 6 guys, 4 or 5 guys at the bullpen that, I mean, go up there and produce and shove and absolutely take care of business every single time. Max Grubbs, Dylan Fuentes, Jason Flores, Thomas Burns, and then Ruger is going from the bullpen to the starting rotation. I mean, he's seamlessly made a transition, and obviously, didn't have his best stuff in his start this time. He goes 3 2/3, 7 hits, 9 earned. But that's, I mean, he was I don't want to say due to regress, but like he was just shoving every time he started after coming out of the bullpen. It was just like a crazy transition. They timed it perfectly, I think, too, as well. But like I said, the depth's the one question for me out of, I think, length, maybe a little bit throughout the postseason on the starting pitching staff as a whole, losing, Jared Spencer, your Friday night ace, but then kind of bullpen length and depth there. Because, I mean, how many times can you roll Dylan Valencia? You can't roll him out 3 games every single weekend, every single postseason, series and throughout the tournament. I mean, Max Grubbs can give you a lot of length to it. So can Dylan, but like, that's the thing I think's going to catch up to them the most, if anything, because we know how clutch this offense is, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Harrison, it was, we were a week early on it with the Texas A&M calling Texas A&M to beat Texas. But, I mean, it's why I was willing to go back to the well again. I mean, first conference weekend on the road against a ranked opponent. And I know there were a lot of Texas fans. And I'm not even – I don't think we've really even been ones to, like, pick on the schedule. Listen, you've handled your business. I mean, it is notable that they've had a lot of these big series at home, but you've handled your business. I don't care. It's the SEC. But – again, their other road series had been Mississippi State, Missouri, and Kentucky. And then you had Arkansas. Which of these is different than the others? Obviously, going to the Hog Pen was their stiffest test on the road, and
I think it was the timing too. The timing after
everything culminated.
Series at home.
Everything culminated. The stars aligned for something like this to happen. Now, Texas. Here's the beauty and the opportunity. You have the opportunity now to respond. You're going to come home next weekend. And that's what makes teams in the SEC, whether you're not good, average, good, great, elite, what separates you, I think, is how you respond to this league. Because we said it, Harrison, everybody, and I mean everybody, is going to get punched in the face. Now, where we really, I think, should be spending our time on this conversation of the Arkansas-Texas series. And, Harrison, this is going to sound like reactionary to a lot of people or an overreaction to one weekend. But I've been saying this for weeks, even when Arkansas lost 3 series in a row. Harrison, I think Arkansas is the best team in the SEC. I think from a roster standpoint, they are the most complete team in the conference. Starting pitching, bullpen, the lineup 1 through 9, coaching. I really believe they are the most complete team. Now, does that mean they won't go in the postseason, piss down their leg again like they normally do? I'm not saying that. But I do believe Arkansas is the most complete team. I was not surprised at all by what we saw over the weekend, even against the Texas team that had been so good. I think when Arkansas is clicking, and they showed over the weekend, they are the best team in the conference. I don't even think it's a discussion, really, to be honest with you.
No, I think definitely Arkansas is the most complete team in the SEC as well, just from a starting pitching staff, the length and depth and talent that they give you week in and week out, whether they have good starts, bad starts, or great starts. Everyone's gonna have their struggles throughout the season, but it's how you respond to those starts, how you get back on track, and then you add Gage Wood in the rotation as well. You throw Gabe Gakel back in the bullpen. He looks so much better in the bullpen, looks more comfortable, and just been able to, I feel like, lock in and just own that role. I mean, that he's been so comfortable with through his career. And then, you have this lineup that 1 through 9 can mash, can do damage no matter who's up, what situation they're up, or, who even comes up. I mean, it could be, anyone, right? It could be Reese Robinette, who has 2 home runs in game 3 against Texas. And, he hadn't hit a home run in over 2 years. It was late March of 2023 versus LSU. I mean, it's just like the guys that step up for them and the depth they have. Several teams have depth, but I think Arkansas has the highest ceiling of depth around the SEC right now. And, obviously Dave Van Horn's one of the best head coaches in college baseball, playing at Baum-Walker. I mean, their record there, I mean, the proof's in the pudding there. I mean, it's in a hostile, a tough environment to play in front of, and they play so good in front of that fan base. And, as well as they're playing, they're going to be playing in front of them for a while in the postseason for sure too. And, it's just about, being hot at the right time, being healthy, and going on a run down in the postseason, because that's all that matters. It doesn't matter, if you beat this team early in the season, you won the SEC regular season. Cool, you won the SEC regular season, but everyone's, they want to win that last game of the year. That's the most important thing. And Arkansas has all the tools to do that, and all the talent and ability to do that. It's just about going there and executing, which they have an incredibly high ceiling to do so. And, I think it'll be one of the toughest teams in the postseason that has all the pieces to complete a monstrous postseason run, get back to Omaha, and cap off a championship that they are so desperate to have. And, they can beat you so many ways. And so there's a lot of upside and optimism for them. And Chris, I'll give you credit. You picked Arkansas to win the SEC regular season. Preseason, everyone was unanimously on Texas A&M. Neither one of us picked them. I picked LSU. You picked Arkansas. And honestly, both picks look really good. I mean, we're both in the top 3 of, conference games right now. But, I mean, I would commend you for that pick for sure. And I think LSU is just behind them depth-wise too. And, starting pitching ability, really good bullpen arms, really talented roster and bench too. But Arkansas definitely has the edge right now, and, proved it this weekend, sweeping Texas in Baum-Walker.
And looking ahead, Harrison, we'll talk about it Thursday, obviously.
Guess who plays who?
Arkansas travels to the box.
Yep.
In what will be just pure cinema yet again in Baton Rouge.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I saw them about a month ago in person in Nashville when they took on Vandy, swept them. I said it then. Obviously, we'll say it again here. I almost hated how much I loved Arkansas and how much I felt like the Omahags. Like, it just felt like an Omaha club. And like I said, with them in the postseason, it will be a mental thing. That's all it will be. It will be.
Well, Chris, I mean, this offense is completely different than any other offense I've seen.
I agree. I agree.
Years.
I mean, we talked about it off record. And I mean, I talked with one of the SEC's head coaches off record and I think even he said this on record. He felt like this is Dave Van Horn's best team that he's ever had at Arkansas. Like, think about that. That's a strong statement, because they've had some incredible teams there. Yeah, I mean, I think this very well, we'll see. A lot of things have to go your way. Ball's got to bounce your way. Things have to happen at the right time. But this very well could be the team that I think brings Arkansas their first national championship. Like,
I think one thing is you got to think Arkansas really got to, Max Grubbs and Dylan Belantis. Who else has done that in the SEC?
Their lineup is so deep. I mean, it's you watch Arkansas, you're going to see a bunch of guys. You can go into a weekend with Arkansas and be like, I know about these top 3 or 4 guys, but like this weekend, you'd have been like, who's this guy? Who's that guy? How many people were talking about Justin Thomas Jr. going into the weekend? Like that was another one that had a big weekend. It's just, they got so many guys that can beat you up and down that lineup.
Yeah. I mean, 24-game SEC start for the 6th time in the program at Baum-Walker. I mean, you got to think about the talent they have, and you get to pass the baton from, brother to brother, Wahia Aloy to Kahui Aloy. I mean, it's like, hey, either join the party or I'll step it up and, I got your back right here. That just feels like the kind of 2-3 punch that they have that's just so lethal on top of the SEC. And then you have Cam Kozel right behind him, and the rest of the guys in the line that can produce. I mean, Justin Thomas Jr. is really good point to make there. I mean, it's just like he's batting 9th. I mean, it's the production he can give you at the 9th hole. That's going to be such a key thing, is just bottom third of the order production, I think, for any team in the SEC going through the postseason, because you got to have bullpen stoppers. And then, you can't rely just on 2, 3, 4 to give you offense production.
Latest SEC standings, Texas now sits 19-5 in conference play. Arkansas at 17-7. It feels like those two teams duking it out for the regular season title. LSU, Georgia, right behind them at 15
And Chris,
and
one
9.
more thing for
Obviously,
Texas. I mean, I don't think it's like, it's like, oh, like sell stock in Texas. Like it's just like, oh, like, they're not that good, right? Yeah, I mean, they played in front of a hostile environment at Baum Walker on the road. Perfect timing. We said accumulation of everything, but like they're still super talented. It's just it was kind of bound to happen, just late in the season. This is the kind of thing that can happen. It's just I think the lack of offensive production for them was more so the thing, but especially those two guys are Grubbs and Vance has given up. I think their worst outings of the season so far. But I mean, I'm not too concerned. But like they didn't. I mean, they played, I guess, a shell of themselves. They didn't have I think these are 2 or 3 of the worst losses, score wise that they've had. I know game 1 and game 3 were for sure this season, but like, I mean, it was still a fun series to watch, unless, obviously you're a Texas fan, but like from an outside looking in, I thought it was a really fun series to watch. You got to see a lot of different things happen in a lot of different pieces. So, I mean, I think also for Texas, you got to see, some more guys throw a little bit, which I think is good for them down the road, possibly, but you never know. We'll see how Texas bounce back. I think it's going to be an important piece for them because, I mean, who do they have coming up? I think it's Missouri and then
who does Texas have?
Yeah,
They got Florida at home this weekend.
Yeah, Florida at home, and then
at Oklahoma.
At Oklahoma, yeah.
So they've got a tough finish to the season. So there's an opportunity to bounce back, but certainly they will be tested. Again, this series can be summarized very simply in this way, Harrison. Texas was due, and they finally ran into an elite team on the road.
Yeah, and Arkansas was due too.
And Arkansas was due too. So I will say this, though, before we move off it, because I said on social media last night, and I'll echo, and we'll talk about the top 25 later in the show, but I would have kept Texas at number 1. I think with if LSU had taken 2 or 3 at Texas A&M, I would have slid them to 1, but they didn't. 2 lost, 3 lost. Texas, guess what? They're still number 1 in the top 25. And listen, they've been the best team in the country up until this past weekend. Yes, they got swept. Yes, they got exposed a little bit, whatever. But I don't think there's anybody else I feel comfortable with right now after one weekend putting there. That being said, I'll go ahead and get out in front of this, Harrison, because my power rankings will drop later today here on this Monday. I got Arkansas number 1. I think they're the best team in the SEC, like I said. I really do feel like, and it's a big jump for them, but if Arkansas is playing their brand of baseball, like if they're clicking, they are the best team in the conference. Like I said, top to bottom, pitching, bullpen, lineup, defense, coaching. I think they're the most well-rounded team. We'll see what they do in the postseason. Very well could piss down their leg. We've seen it before. But this is the best team in the SEC, and they really flexed their muscles over the weekend. So I was not surprised to see Texas stay at 1, but I think Arkansas.
You got to think. It's like you said, like the 2 of the top teams losing with,
Are we losing Harrison, or did I lose internet? Are we losing Harrison, or did I lose internet? I think we lost Harrison. Something happened with Harrison's internet. So we will – welcome to the show. We're officially back now. I don't know what has happened to Harrison's connection. It sounds like you guys can still hear me. But anyways, with that being said, and hopefully he can throw himself back in here when things get resolved. And apparently I have jinxed Harrison's connection. Let's see. Yes, it is definitely a Harrison thing, not a me thing. I'm just relieved it's not a me thing. I'm relieved it's not a me thing. Apparently this is a Harrison thing. Technical issues. We made it 3 straight shows without a technical issue. We could not make it a 4th straight. Unfortunately, we could not make it a 4th straight. So I think Harrison's internet just crashed on him. We'll see if we can get him back in here in just a moment. Let's see. As he continues to buffer. I don't know if he realizes we're just getting a buffering signal here. We were due. Hey, just like Texas, we were due for a setback. There he is.
Now?
There you are. I thought it was a me thing.
I don't know. It had both of us buffered on my screen. I don't know. I mean,
I think your internet just took a shit.
Yeah, because I had a Wi-Fi signal on mine, but my computer Wi-Fi strength was full. I just kind of disconnected and reconnected.
Gotcha.
So
it's okay. Listen, we went 3 whole shows without a single technical issue. So kind of like Arkansas and Texas, we were due.
Do it now before the postseason. That's all that matters.
Get it out before the postseason. Yes. Anyways, closing thoughts. Arkansas, Texas. What do you?
I mean, it's going to be a round tree circle. Like you and I talked before jumping on air today about how Florida took a huge series from Arkansas. Arkansas takes a huge series from Texas, who was due, but now Florida travels to Texas for a huge series when Florida's streaking at the right time, winning games that they have to win. And I mean, it's coming down the wire in the SEC, I think, for so many different storylines and kind of for each team, but also the conference as a whole. And we're super excited to see it.
Indeed. Harrison, let's move on to Rocky Top. This one was wild in the Friday through Sunday series. Obviously, we'll start with this one. Tennessee and Auburn. Auburn goes on the road and takes 2 of 3 from the reeling Vols. And this was one of the – we're going to talk about a few of these. This was one of the wacky weather-impacted weekends where they start – which, by the way, the fact they start the game Friday night in a
monsoon.
In a monsoon. It is pouring rain. They, for whatever reason, start the game. They have to stop it in the first inning. Liam Doyle essentially gets burned for that night. Tony Vitello's losing his mind. Again, weather – I forget. Did they resume on – they did resume on – yeah, that's right. They resumed on Saturday. They made it to the 10th inning. Mm-hmm. Then they got to delay the game again. Then they go into Sunday. They resume in the 10th inning. Tennessee turns to Liam Doyle in extra innings, which pays off because they win that game 2 in extras. Then game 3, Auburn absolutely shoves. By the way, Auburn wins game 1 behind Sam Dutton, who's been incredible. Auburn takes 2 of 3, pulls, I think, what's maybe one of the upsets of the weekend. I didn't see many folks out there going with Auburn on the road to get it done.
Nobody.
But the Auburn pitching, they dominate. I thought the Vols, honestly, Harrison, this is taking nothing away from Auburn, by the way, because I think we need to spend the majority of the time giving Auburn their roses. I think this is a team we've been saying for weeks, not enough people are talking about Auburn. Auburn's kind of flying. All right, we need to put that aside. Like, Auburn is a Omaha contender. Just say it with me. Auburn is an Omaha contender. Right. We like, there's no more. They're under the radar. They're a nice story. They're just a really, really good team at this point. I don't think the most talented team in the conference, but Butch Thompson's got that team playing together. They've got enough dudes in the lineup that can hurt you, and the pitching's been really, really good. But the Vols look flustered, I thought, from the jump, man. And then you go into Sunday, Tony Vitello gets tossed, and we can obviously talk about some of the umpiring that affected the first 2 series that we have talked about. But Tennessee's reeling, man. There's just no other way to put it. Tennessee is reeling. I've heard people talking about a lack of leadership kind of thing, which I'm not going to sit here on this Monday and say I told you so, but this was one of the concerns I had with Tennessee when you lose guys like Semo and Blake Burke. Like, they just don't look like the same group. Harrison, Tennessee now, 3 SEC series home losses in a season for the first time since 2017 before Tony got there. Your thoughts on this one? Because, again, it was a weird weekend, wet weekend because of the rain, but a weekend that results in Auburn, I think, making a statement on Rocky Top.
Yeah, I think it was definitely a statement for the Auburn Tigers on Rocky Top, Chris, on the road in the SEC. We know how hard it is to do that, to go play on the road, let alone against a very incredibly talented team like Tennessee, team led by an incredible head coach in Tony Vitello. But a statement weekend for them. I'm going to put kind of a half asterisk on it because of the weather as well and how that played. I think that kind of the whole Liam Doyle situation with how that was kind of pitched and handled, and then the ejection of him, the ejection of Tony Vitello, the umpiring crew. I mean, that was one of the, I think, worst SEC series I think I've seen called in quite a while. So I'm going to put half an asterisk on it, not to take anything away from Auburn, but just kind of as a whole as it is. I think Tennessee's way too talented to, I think, sell a ton of stock in them. I think it's just kind of that they're in just this cold streak, trying to stop the bleeding like Arkansas did this past weekend after they had 3 series losses, Chris. I mean, you said, I refuse to believe Arkansas is going to lose 4 straight SEC series. I think Tennessee's kind of the same way. Just Auburn caught them at the right time. They played very, very high level baseball. The pitching staff was very good. They kept Tennessee off balance all game. It wasn't that they did anything that just blew me away. Like, wow, this is why, they kind of got Tennessee in this situation. They're really shutting down this way. It was just executing the pitches. I mean, I think the lefties for Auburn looked really good too. And then kind of the mix of arm slots and release heights too was a really unique kind of combination, how that was handled and kind of strategize with Butch Thompson for Auburn. I think that just execution wise was great, especially given the weather and how kind of the whole series went, which, like you said, that game should not have been started game one in a monsoon. I mean, it was just really, really strong and just mixed matching of pitching from the entire Auburn staff and guys stepping what they need to, especially Carson Myers. I mean, I thought scattering 7 hits and only giving up 1 run. I mean, it was really good from him. Just Armstrong looked good after him. I mean, it was just next guy after next guy after next guy for Auburn, and they did it in situations that they needed to most. They took advantage of base running, Chris. We know how Tennessee struggles with holding guys on base. Auburn averages a stolen base a game. Through game 2, Chris, they had 9 stolen bases, I believe. I mean, when you do that and you got a guy like Samuel Dutton on the mound too, who gives you another incredible start in a game 1 of a series. I mean, just really strong. It sets you up for a lot of opportunity to succeed in a series. And you have guys like Ike Irish who play great offensive, production in the lineup, but also has a cannon from the outfield. Misplayed 1 ball, but then obviously he throws a guy at home. You have other guys getting thrown out from the outfield as well, all over the base path for Tennessee. The struggles that they've kind of had defensively as well. I just think Tennessee's just kind of, I don't want to say lost an identity because I don't think that's true at all. It's just kind of, not playing their brand of baseball, not just playing as together as I've seen them play and as clutch as possible and as, consistently at a high level they do. But man, Auburn Tigers went in there, took a massive series, statement series, headline series win for the Auburn Tigers. And they're definitely a deep postseason team and an Omaha contender.
Yeah, Auburn punched them in the face. There's no question. And like I said, I think the most surprising thing was I felt like Tennessee was flustered all weekend. They seemed unsettled to me. And I don't have a problem with like Tony V getting tossed, right? You're trying to spark your club.
Yeah, no, I love that. I was fine with that. That's his first time he's gotten thrown out since 2023 against Missouri.
Yeah, I'm saying that because obviously social media has taken that and has run crazy. I mean, I think the clip that we reshared of that is almost like 400,000 views on Twitter. I mean, listen, I will say this about Tennessee, and I got nothing but love for Tony V and the Vols, and really, truly. But I'm just making this statement, and I think Vol fans would acknowledge this too. It's very easy to hate Tennessee because of, Tony's a fiery guy, and he's a chirpy dude, and they're a cocky bunch of motherfuckers, and you got Liam Doyle shoving a guy at home plate. Like, when you don't win, you're going to face there's nobody that has any sympathy for Tennessee. Nobody with the way they play. And I think the way they play, it has worked out more times than it hasn't under Tony. I'm not telling them they should change, but if you're wondering why this amount of backlash I shouldn't say backlash, this amount of people trying to dance on your graves is happening, well, that's why. That is. So, and I got no issue with it, but I'm just making the simple point. Tennessee's got to continue to be who they are, but boy, they got to find themselves quickly, Harrison, because they got the Vandy boys coming to town, and Vandy, I believe, back-to-back years has been swept by Tennessee, if I recall correctly. So that one's going to be, you can expect the emotions again, another weekend on Rocky Top, where the emotions are going to be through the roof, and we'll see how they handle it. But I'm not necessarily hitting the panic button on Tennessee because I think, too, to overreact and to be like it's time to panic, again, it's just not giving the credit we need to give to Auburn, who I don't think is the most talented team in the conference by any means, but they got one of the most underrated coaches in Butch Thompson. Yep. Sam Dutton's a legitimate number 1. I mean,
he's not an overpowering number 1, though. He executes his pitches in the zone and gets you to, hit his pitch and get yourself out a lot of times. It's nothing like he's blowing smoke by you or just having this, kind of Cade Anderson, Anthony Einstein dagger of a 12-6, but it's just, he's such a good pitcher. He's a kind of a surgeon of a pitcher, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, he's been so good for them all year, so a legitimate number 1. Cade Fisher's been good in whatever role they've used him in. Obviously came out of the pen over the weekend. They've got other guys on the bump that have stepped up and pitched really well. And then, again, you've got the heart and soul of your team, Ike Irish, Cooper McMurray, love the Derek Fabian kid. Weekends. Yeah, they both had huge weekends. I mean, they really carry that club. So Auburn, again, they're going to be a host. I think they are a real legitimate. You tell me right now they make it to Omaha, Harrison, I'm not really all that surprised. I think they're a really good team, and Butch Thompson's track record there at Auburn, like, they're going to make a push for it. So, so I think, again, give the credit to Auburn that's deserved, a real Omaha contender. But the balls are scuffling, man. I mean, they are really, really scuffling.
Talk about the production outside. We talk about Ike Irish and Cooper McMurray and, Cade Ballou all the time, kind of the go-to names for them.
Yeah.
Chris Rembert had a huge game himself, with 2 hits in RBI. And then obviously the production from Ike Irish later in that game. You got Chris Rembert, who has, 2 walks in the next game. Not much RBI, but just getting on base and just the threats of how Auburn stole so many bases throughout the game. And then you have, after that, you got guys like Lucas Steele, who have a huge game for himself. I mean, he has 3 RBIs in one of the games, and it's just, it's guys that can step up and produce outside of it. Because we talk about with Arkansas, how deep a lineup can be. You need production outside of 2 guys in a lineup. You can't just have 2, 3, 4 production. You need, 6, 7, 8, 9 production as well. So, I mean, that was the big thing for Auburn, I think, too. But I think we do need to give some kudos and shout out to how Tony Vitello managed the game they won with, pinch hitting in that situation with a freshman. I mean, Chris, come on. I mean, I remember, did you watch that situation, how it went down with Chris, was it Newstrom, who came in as a freshman? I think he's batting like over 300, but not obviously a full kind of season slate of at-bats. But to come in that situation as a freshman and deliver, I mean, monumentally huge. I think just pulling the right strings at the right time, and shows why Tony Vitello is such an elite coach and one of, if not the best coaches in the country. And, that's just what it's going to take for Tennessee, I think, to get out of a spell like that. Just continue to have guys step up like that, whether it's off the bench or just in certain situations and roles. But I was really impressed with that and thought that needed to be noted.
National championship hangover, Harrison? Does it kind of feel like that with Tennessee?
Well, everyone's talking about the first half of the season, how, Tennessee somehow passed it on to the runner-up with Texas A&M. But, I mean, Chris.
Baseball is a long season. It can flip.
It is. I mean, Chris, we talked about it earlier this season, and then we can move on to the next. About, you said earlier, is this Tennessee team better than the national championship team last year?
The answer was no.
We had that discussion, Chris. We did. I mean,
that was premature. That was premature.
No, Chris, statistically, they're up there. I mean, talk about the home run record and just how much of offense they put out.
Harrison, is it fair to say that maybe the way that was an overreaction would be the same way it's an overreaction to panic and say, like, Tennessee is no good? I think both would be a little.
Because, Chris, think about it. If Tennessee goes on a run, let's say wins the next 2 series to in the regular season, goes on a deep postseason run, goes back to Omaha, no one's going to be surprised and be like, yeah, right. Well, that sounds about right. That's how talented this club is, and that's how good of a coach Tony Vitello is, peaking at the right time. That's exactly what we're going to say if that happens.
Yeah, no doubt. It'll be interesting to see how it closes out because, again, they are ice cold, losing 4. Think about this. Lost 4 of their last 5 series, and the one series they won, Harrison, it was at Ole Miss, and they had to score 3 runs in the top of the 9th, the final game, to win that one. I mean, we could be talking about Tennessee losing 5 straight SEC series, which is truly hard to comprehend. So they haven't, but they were very close. 4 of their last 5. Again, you got 2 regular season weekends to figure it out, get hot. We'll see if the Vols can
but hey, Chris, can't win a national championship in April.
You don't win the national title in late April or early May. That is true. But you do build momentum to the postseason. It's about time to get it in gear. That being said, Harrison, talking about building momentum towards the postseason. The Texas A&M Aggies welcome LSU to Bluebell and take 2 of 3 from the Tigers, thanks to Caden Sorrell's heroics in Game 3. Poetic. Harrison, it was poetic the way it ended because of how we've talked about Caden Sorrell. Him being the spark plug that essentially it feels like has single-handedly, I know it's been more than him, but it feels like has turned around A&M's season going all the way back to that Saturday in Knoxville. He comes up, hits the first hit of the weekend, I might add, hits the big bomb late in the game. Texas A&M wins the rubber match. This series was pure cinema, Harrison. I mean, all 3 games were close. I heard him talking about on the broadcast. Like, if you look at I didn't realize how close the series history is. These 2 teams are essentially like 500 against each other since they started playing.
I think it's they've played 65 times, and it's 34-30 31-1 is the series.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how tight these contests have been. But Texas A&M getting the better of LSU. Harrison, we talked about how important this one was for the Aggies when you talk about building their postseason resume, fighting towards the postseason. You know, I was still very skeptical going into the weekend that this was really, are they really going to finish it off? Are they really going to make a run to the postseason? Well, Harrison, now the Aggies sit at 10-14 in conference play with series wins at Arkansas, at LSU,
Tennessee.
and at Tennessee.
Yeah.
So things are looking up in Aggie
And
land.
Chris,
And for
guess
LSU,
they have the next two series in the regular season.
yes, they are. What do they have? They have Mizzou at home,
Missouri at home,
at
and
Georgia.
at Georgia.
So still an opportunity to get to. I think even maybe with 12 SEC wins, this team might get in. But you could just, I mean, heck, they got Mizzou coming up. So getting to 13 feels pretty likely. Then you got Georgia closed out. Either way, Harrison,
and in the tournament.
massive, yeah, and then the tournament. But a massive weekend for the Aggies. And for LSU, listen, I'm still high on the Tigers. I just saw them 2 weeks ago or so. Week or so ago, I should say. The thing that concerns me with them is when they face good arms, man, that lineup can go ice cold so quick. The arms, their arms are there. Anthony Ianton spun a gem. Cade Anderson pitched well. You know, I love Case and Evans if they can continue to trot him out there in the Sunday role, the game 3 role. Here's the thing, Harrison, you went to your guy in Zach Cowan, and he gives up the bomb. So, I mean, I'm not worried about LSU, but, man, a gut punch to lose to the Aggies on the road. I know there's a lot of LSU fans, a lot of our LSU friends that are reeling here on this Monday.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, the ceiling or I guess the floor for LSU is their pitching staff with how good their 1, 2, 3 punches and the guys in the bullpen they have. I mean, yet again, Chris, I'll start with Anthony Ianson. Just kind of the highlight, I think, pitching staff of the weekend was Anthony Ianson, 9 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, 14 Ks, 1 walk. I mean, Chris, come on. I mean, he just a stud. He's gotten better, it feels like, every single outing throughout the year. And I think he's gotten better in the sense of how he pitches and executing his pitches and just kind of being more surgical with it. Not trying to do too much, but just the execution has been so much more surgical and pinpoint. And you got Cade Anderson that goes before him on a Friday in a game 1, and he goes 12 punchies in 6 innings. I mean, come on, scatters 3 hits, 1 run. I mean, the guys that they have do that. I know you said Cowan gave up, obviously, the runs there and kind of let that game go. But, I mean, he's just so talented, too. Out of the bullpen, they have arms out of the bullpen that can do that. You don't have to use any in game 2 with Ianson. And then, it's just game 3, anything can happen. Everyone's available, Chris. And
game 3 on the road, too.
On the road, too. I mean, Casey Evans obviously doesn't have his best stuff. I mean, I think it was more so the walks that kind of got to him and just kind of led to things, pitch count up and just, opportunities for Texas A&M. But you got to think Texas A&M as well. You got Ryan Prager, Justin Lankin, and Miles Patton, who can pitch at a very elite level. More so, I think they've been pitching at they give you quality starts almost every single time all 3 of them are out there. And it was just kind of the lineup situation. They're two very, I think, similar teams in the fact of starting pitching side. I think LSU has the edge there for sure. I think A&M has a little bit more offensive production against better pitching, like you said. Outside of, I'd say, Bear Jones. I mean, it's just, and Derek Curiel, because he's probably one of the best hitters in the SEC. He just reminds me, of a Luis Ariz. I think a little bit more pop. But it's just playing against really good pitching on the road, Chris, is not easy to do. And LSU, is one of those teams that's going to be in a lot of, I think, closer games than people think. Obviously, I'd say most games in the SEC are probably, run and a half different, I think, is the average score. That's why you see lines that are, 1.5 or 2.5, whatever it is. I think LSU's in a lot of those situations. It's going to obviously help them for the postseason playing these tight games. And that's just kind of the pedigree of this team. They're not just smashing home runs like we've seen other LSU teams. I know we say that a lot, but I think it's important to kind of reiterate throughout the season. But I mean, Chris, and this was an opportunity that they could go in and kind of slam a door shut for A&M in a sense of like, hey, like we're LSU in this rivalry and we're at the top of the SEC. And, A&M, I think, took that, put on the bulletin, said, hey, this is a huge rivalry that I don't think a lot of people talk about. And A&M just came up clutch and Caden scored. I mean, he even had bases loaded and I think it was in the 6th inning and maybe 7th, and slaps it down left field line. A great catch. Chris, we saw a lot of really good catches in this series. I mean, especially out of left field. We saw, I think some other good catches around and good plays around the field.
We saw a lot of good catches across the league this week.
Across the league. And then obviously Tennessee-Auburn series, you have a lot of sliding issues too with the turf and the wetness. Great catches in that game too. But I mean, this series, I think you just got a lot of what you love to see about college baseball. Elite pitching, timely hitting, clutchness, great defensive plays, and a rubber match and a rivalry series. I mean, I don't think you can ask for more, except for if you're an LSU fan, to win that Game 3 in rubber match. But that just shows the guts and I think the will that this A&M team has, that, doesn't matter how you start, it's how you finish. And we're here, and, we're doing everything we can to play for each other, play at our highest and best of balance and abilities. And Chris, I said it to you off air, Caden Sorrell is the heartbeat of this A&M offense. Everything changed when he came back, and everything I think revolves around his offense production. When you have, I think that also takes a lot of the pressure off Jace Lavalette and allows him to, play a little more loose, a little more free. We've seen him do so heavily in huge series, but I think as a whole, he's played a lot better. I mean, his numbers are not, bad at all, like by any means. It's just, I think people had just such a high ceiling expectation from this season that all the pressure was on him. And I think that when you have Caden Sorrell returned and, how well he's played since then, it's rejuvenated this A&M offense. And, obviously the golden putter, no one really knows where it came from, just kind of happened. You get the Masters green jacket, pretty timely with that as well. But, a monumental series that I think A&M wanted to have, desperately needed to have, and, is trending in the right direction again, especially responding after you go to Austin, the whole storylines with playing Texas and Coach Schlossnagle and getting swept there, all super close games. You come back home to Bluebell Park in front of your fan base and you respond with a massive series win against LSU. This A&M team's not dead yet, Chris, and not a team you want to see as a 3 seed in your regional come postseason.
Texas A&M, to your point, Harrison, is one of the reasons we just love baseball. Because in this game, and I'm getting out ahead of myself, but throw Florida in this conversation. I think you could maybe throw Mississippi State in this conversation, but focusing on A&M. The beautiful thing about this game is you have opportunities to respond, and you have times where you have to respond. You have no other choice but to respond. I mean, this team was dead. I mean, I was so confident after they lost that series to Kentucky. I was like, this team is cooked.
Chris, it felt like the Monstars, like I said earlier this season, took their powers and just this is not the same A&M team.
Yeah, there was, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that Texas A&M was not going to the postseason. They were done. For them to, again, respond the way they have, like you mentioned, get swept at Texas, come back, beat a damn good LSU team, emotional series at Bluebell, that home run by Caden Sorrell. I mean, it just it's one of those how can you not be romantic about baseball moments. Really, truly, came down to the wire as we expected, but my goodness, just the turnaround for Texas A&M. You can't say enough good things. Give credit to Michael Early, give credit to that coaching staff, because we dogged them so hard early in the season. They deserve a ton of credit for this. They deserve a ton of credit. And like you said, I don't think anybody wants to see A&M in their regional. Nobody. With those 3 horses they've got on the bump in the starting rotation and the talent they've got in the lineup, nobody wants to see them. On the LSU side, I want to say this before we get out of here, Harrison. And I swear I'm not picking on our friends from Baton Rouge at all, but it is funny. Just like you look at the reaction on social media and talk to some LSU folks. And I think they selfishly wanted this one because, again, LSU and A&M folks, let's call it what it is. They don't like each other. Doesn't matter the sport. So there's a lot of folks that are probably walking back some takes today from the LSU side. LSU's probably got the most antsy fan base in the SEC from the standpoint of, like, they beat Tennessee 2 out of 3. It's like, this team's the greatest team. They're, number 1 team. Then they lose 2 out of 3 to A&M, and you see some of the fire Jay Johnson takes coming back, which is just absolutely outrageous. But, like, that's how important winning is down there. The box is going to be rocking this weekend yet again, no doubt, against Arkansas. But, again, LSU's going to be fine. Sometimes you just hand the baseball to your guy. And like I've told you before, Harrison, there's 2 things in this world I don't trust: college kickers and college bullpens. You just can't trust either one of them for anything it's worth. And, Zach Cowan's a great pitcher, and he's going to have better days. But sometimes their guy just beats your guy. And I could even argue, Harrison, the baseball gods kind of gave you game one against Tennessee. They got theirs back against Texas A&M in game 3. So you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Sometimes you're on the wrong side of those kind of games, and that's all it took for Aiden to win the series. So you talk about delivering. That series delivered in every aspect. But this A&M team, man, wow. I mean, you just can't say enough good things. You just can't. The turnaround's been incredible.
The turnaround, their production throughout their lineup. I mean, Ben Royo, you're talking about production. I mean, he's really stepped up, I think, more so than anyone else outside of Caden Sorrell. I mean, just the production that he's kind of given you, and Barry Harrison as well. I mean, he's now reached base safely in 25 of his last 28 games. I think that's just so important. Just guys getting on base, just finding a way, no matter what, it's a walk, hit by pitch, error, base hit, it doesn't matter what it is. And, when you have guys like that in the lineup that can step up to help, help the offensive production. And then you have guys in the mound who, McCoy, he's allowed 1 run in 16 strikeouts in his last 10 1/3. I mean, to do that coming out of the pen, I mean, it's crazy to see how the turnaround has been for them. And you have now A&M, who has series victories, 3 of them over a top 2 opponent this season, Chris. I mean, they've won 4 of their last 5 SEC series. You got guys getting hot, peaking, playing together, playing their best baseball at the right time, Chris. It's all about getting hot at the right time, Chris, and A&M is doing that right now towards the end of the season.
The Aggies are officially hot, one could argue. LSU look to bounce back next weekend. Harrison, let's go to what took place down on the West End, Nashville, Tennessee, as Vanderbilt takes 2 of 3 against Alabama. Braden Holcomb walks them off in game 3 to give Vandy the series dub. RJ Austin, Harrison with a big weekend. He comes alive. J.D. Thompson, Cody Bowker, very, very good. J.D. Thompson was special on Friday night. And then I think I want to talk about Alabama, Harrison. Just what are we making of the Crimson Tide at this point? Because you talk about falling off. I mean, we're talking about a team that early in the season, some were putting them in the top 10. Now we're talking about they're not even going to host. But Vandy boys, you talk about a team that's hot. The Vandy boys are officially hot as they take 2 out of 3 there at Hawkins.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a statement series for Vanderbilt in the fact that, this is a desperate series that Alabama needs and, wants to have. And, all the production, I feel like, is surrounded by Justin LeBron, who went 0 for 5 in game 3, 0 for 2 with 2 walks in game 2, and 1 for 4
He's struggling.
In game 1.
Justin LeBron's struggling.
A guy that's continued struggling. As talented as he is, it's really surprising to see. And, the lineup around him hasn't stepped up to fulfill the times that he struggled, like right now, as much as they've needed to. And then when you have a pitching staff that, they don't have a 1-2-3 punch starting rotation like LSU, like A&M, I'm going to say Tennessee, even though fans don't like to hear that, Texas. I think even with some of their struggles, they don't have guys that are stepping up in situations like that. And, to be able to hold a Vanderbilt offense who's last in the SEC in average, you give up 12 runs to them in 8 innings, you end up getting run ruled. I mean, it's just something that, is, I guess, part of why Alabama is kind of spiraling. It's not a sense of, they're just not doing this right. Just timely hitting. It feels like an accumulation of kind of more than one facet of the game. Like they're able to lose in multiple ways. It's not like, all the pressures on the offense and Justin LeBron not producing. Like the pitching staff, is here and there holding their own, giving you, chances. But when you give up 9, 12, obviously, you give up 2 in game 2 to them. But when you give up 9 and 12 runs to Vanderbilt,
23 runs in 3 games.
Teams. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be tough to win, let alone playing on the road. I know Vanderbilt's not as hostile as an environment as others in the SEC. All you have to deal with, is the echoing and the Vandy Whistler, who Chris is obsessed with and loves the Vandy Whistler. He's a huge proponent of. But Hawkins Field's pretty cool. I'll say that too. But just not, a top-tier SEC venue. That was a series that Alabama needed to go in and just kind of turn the tide, and they really didn't. And it was, you're having to face elite arms, and when the offense is struggling, going up against a guy like J.D. Thompson, who is going to go out there and give you a quality start every single time, if not a very incredibly strong start like he did yet again this weekend. 7 innings, 2 hits, no earned, 11 punchies, 2 walks. I mean, it saves the bullpen. You only have to use Miller Green, who is one of your really good guys. He does get shelled around a little bit. 1 inning, 2 earned on 3 hits, but it saves the bullpen for them when they have, Saturday starter and Cody Balker goes up there, competes, doesn't give you as quality of a start as you'd like. It wasn't considered a quality start, obviously, but you're able to kind of capitalize that when Riley Quick kind of out-duels him and gives you length there. But then you got to face a Connor Fennell on Sunday, who's been one of the, I think, hottest SEC Sunday starters, if not the hottest Sunday starter in the league. And he goes up there, does give up 5, but gives you 5 innings of just competitive kind of pitching and, keeps you in the game, because that offense as well is giving you opportunities with Braden Holcomb and Brody Johnson, who are just producing. And you got RJ Austin, who's heating up. Obviously, he didn't have a good game 3. He was 0 for 4, but you got guys that are kind of stepping up. In Vanderbilt, their offense, they're stepping up when they need to right now. It's not that high of a level, but it's just kind of feels like it's just enough, or barely just not enough. And this weekend, Chris, it was just enough. And the offensive staff as a whole lineup, I think, really surprised and impressed more people than the pitching staff, because we know we're going to get from this pitching staff. But to see the lineup do what they did, put up, what did you say, 23
runs in 3 games. Yeah,
in 3 games, a Vanderbilt lineup who's last in the SEC in hitting. I mean,
Harrison, what's wild though,
Alabama.
What's wild though, we've talked about all season, and if I do give myself some credit, I thought I dropped a bar last week when I said that their floor is controlled by their pitching staff, their ceiling is controlled by their lineup.
Yeah.
And we've been critical of them all season, but Harrison, they're going to host.
Yeah.
Barring a meltdown the last 2 weekends, and I think that's what this weekend was in Nashville. This was kind of whoever wins this series is on the fast track to host a regional. And I'll get to Bama in a second, but dude, Vandy's at 14-10, and that's with their lineup, their offense being, like you said, ranked last. Think about how good they've been in the other facets to be 14-10 in conference play.
Yeah.
If RJ Austin gets hot, if they swing it, I think Vandy might be in Omaha. I think Vandy very well is a contender to get to Omaha with the right matchup. With the right matchup, I think they could get to Omaha with the right
matchups, and I think a little bit more bullpen depth, obviously, to go along with the headline of more offensive production. Batting average, they're last in the SEC. Missouri's 12th for reference. Vanderbilt's last in the SEC in batting average, last in slugging, 14th in on-base percentage. Runs scored, they're somehow tied for 11th. I think it's a lot of stealing bases. They do at a pretty decently well level. They're 14th in hitting. RBIs, they're 12th in RBIs. Doubles, they're 14th in doubles. They're 16th in home runs at 31. Just like you said, the floor is the pitching staff of getting to a regional and hosting a regional. The ceiling of Omaha is going to be based on the offensive production or the lack thereof. But a great weekend for Vanderbilt to do so and kind of build momentum coming into these last 2 regular season series for the SEC, and just the exact opposite of what you want if you're an Alabama fan, just not turning the tide like they need to, pun intended, this weekend in Vanderbilt when they could have. This is a great opportunity in a series to do so, because that's the pitching staff, Chris, you're going to see as Alabama all postseason long. You're going to see that good of arms. And when you think about it, Vanderbilt's pitching staff has been so consistent. What is it? 13 consecutive games of double-digit punchies.
That's impressive.
Yeah. 13 really consecutive games. That's let's say at least 10 in the SEC straight.
Yeah, that's wild. That is an impressive stat. I think, Harrison, before we get off this one, Alabama, I think they're honestly just regressing to what I thought they'd be when the season started. You could say they've been cold. I think the difference with Bama, I don't think there's a hot on the other side of this. I don't think there's a hot where man, if Bama gets rolling, where I feel like with Tennessee, right? If Tennessee, I expect Tennessee to come into form, to play better.
This feels more like Tennessee's floor. This feels like
right. This more so feels like this is kind of who Bama probably always was. You hate to take away from early in the season, but I remember when you and I were talking, I had Bama in my top 5 in my power rankings, and it's hey, you got to give teams credit, move them up, but it always felt like I was I don't think this is who Bama really is. You know what I mean? They're a solid club, don't get me wrong, and they're going to be probably a solid 2 seed somewhere, but never felt like a regional hosting kind of club to me. Maybe a super was the ceiling for them.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of what we're seeing.
Chris, early in the season, we especially talked about how Alabama and Auburn are very similar teams, right?
Yeah.
just production-wise on the offensive side, but also pitching staff-wise, it was going to be, who kind of steps up, what side of, offense or pitching staff steps up for each of these teams. And Auburn's really done so, especially kind of late in the season against better competition than Alabama. And, Alabama's kind of proven to be that middle of the pack. We were both middle of the pack, I think, tier 2 going into the season, kind of going into the SEC conference play. Auburn's really pushed that envelope and pushing out of that tier 2 and, flirting with tier 1. So I think that's kind of been the difference. And it's been predicated on, timely hitting for Auburn, length of, starting pitching production out of them, and the lack thereof for Alabama in both those categories.
Yeah, 2 teams in the state of Alabama feels like going in different directions. Harrison, let's move on. We got 4 more series to go. Before we do that, I want to tell you about our friends over at Melon Hats. You see, I've got the black, the gray. Harrison, I see what you've put here in the notes.
And Harrison has neither.
I would make the bet you are going to have these hats before the SEC tournament because, again, based off the conversations I've had with our people, these hats have been shipped. So you might have it by end of week. Just make sure you're checking your mail. Either way, you want to make sure you get yours today, and I promise the shipping and you getting your hats will be much, much quicker than how long it's taken us to get them to Harrison. But either way, hopefully, definitely. Guys, again, I love these hats. The durability, the comfort, the fit, the sizing. One of the best hats in the game. They've become essentially a go-to hat for me, whether I'm at the golf course, the gym, the beach, just hanging out around the house, out in the town, whatever it is. Melon hats are the way to go. And again, with their thermal collection and their hydro collection, whether it's warm weather, cool weather, you're going to have your needs met. You're going to have the hat you need for wherever it is you are, whatever situation you're in. Once again, guys, if you're looking for the world's most durable hat, look no further than melon.com. Go to melin.com. Put it to the test yourself. Again, that's melon.com, melin.com, and tell them that Chris and Harrison from the Windup sent you. Harrison, with that being said, let's keep it moving. Oklahoma takes 2 of 3 from Ole Miss in Norman. Shocker, Kyson Witherspoon shoved in game 1, and Oklahoma wins that game. I thought Cade Crossland, Harrison, obviously really good as well, out-dueling Riley Maddox. Ole Miss does avoid the sweep in game 3, getting the dub. What'd you make of this series? I think one that really flew under the radar for whatever reason over the weekend, but Oklahoma playing some good baseball. Skip Johnson and company taking the series against Hotty Toddy.
Yeah, I think I want to start with game 3 with Ole Miss salvaging this, not getting swept on the road, because we talk about how important winning the series at home is and not getting swept on the road. Doing so in a game 3 on the road, especially when you have to travel out west, is not as easy as it seems. But when the way they kind of did it, because Mason Nichols gives you a 1 2/3 and pitched well. I mean, he just walked some guys. I think, he had 3 walks, 1 strikeout, and 1 2/3. But then Mason Morris comes in and gives you a long relief opportunity and, holds the line there, just doing these kind of the exact opposite, just striking out a lot of guys, only allowed 1 walk, scattered 3 hits, 1 run. And you kind of have, the back and the bullpen come in behind him and just hold the line because, Malachi Witherspoon, we've seen him pitch a lot this season. It's like, what are you going to get from him? You're going to get, a quality start or more often than not, or just kind of like, maybe he has a tough outing here or just, wow, he outpitches his brother Kyson Witherspoon, or whatever kind of in between those facets to kind of cover everything. But you kind of almost get a quality start from him here, but then it kind of just falls out of that, especially when, the production of Ole Miss's lineup picks up late and kind of in his start, 4th inning, 5th inning, really. And just Ole Miss fighting and clawing, honestly. I mean, when you have guys that just reach base, it doesn't matter if it's a fielder's choice, a single or whatever it is, just putting pressure and getting on base, putting pressure on the other team's defense in doing so. And I think it was a big piece for Ole Miss going throughout the rest of the, the last 2 series of this regular season to be able to steal one on the road here in a game 3 after, your back's against the wall of getting swept, Chris. That was one of kind of the most notable things for me. Obviously, like you said, Kyson Witherspoon, throwing to Jim too. But I think losing a close game for Ole Miss, how they did in game 2, just, getting held to 2 hits was just tough to see because you have Hunter Elliott who gives you a quality start, almost 7 innings, scattering 2 earned. It's like, we can't put anything up to kind of back that, right? Mm-hmm. And you do that. And obviously, Kyson Witherspoon does what he does, no earned. I mean, it's just one of those things like, you kind of almost have.
He's the best ace in the SEC for my money's worth. I think he is
best, most consistent. I think part of it is predicated on just it feels like it is on how Oklahoma's offense does when he starts. I feel like because we've seen him get, outpitched by Pico Connor, Kyson outpitches, most guys. And then he's just like, why is Oklahoma losing this game when Kyson's pitching? We've seen that before, but when your pitchers give you quality starts like Hunter Elliott does, and, Riley Maddox, we've seen up and downs with him. We talked about the inconsistencies that he's had. And it's like, how do we kind of bounce back off that? Walker Hooks comes in and does his job after him, but just like the offense just kind of feels dead around it. Even though you have 10 hits, you just get scattered almost. And, you're not having those clutch hits that get guys in with runners on. So that was the biggest thing, I think, was more so leaving guys on, especially in that game too. But, it's one of those things that's tough to win on the road, Chris. And, Ole Miss would have loved to have that series. And, when you've played, 2 tough games, 2 close games, you lose 2-0 and 5-3, those just really hurt and you just kind of itch at you and scratch. But to win game 3 and the way they did, I think was important for the rest of the season for them.
And Oklahoma now, both these teams, by the way, Harrison, sitting at 13-11 in SEC play. I think this was another series similar to Vandy Bama that was big for hosting implications. It feels like, again, we'll see what happens the rest of the way, but as long as Oklahoma doesn't just completely crumble down the stretch, good chance we're going to have postseason baseball in Norman. I think Ole Miss probably more so staring at a 2 seed somewhere. But again, a lot of baseball still, 6 conference games remain. So
yeah, and I think Ole Miss, you got to be kind of frustrated because you hold this lineup that, isn't going to blow you away in Oklahoma, but they've shown they've been able to put up, double-digit hits, double-digit runs in games. And, you get 2 runs and you lose, and you get 5 and you lose because Ole Miss knows they can put up runs. Their offense, it feels a little more streaky, would you say, than kind of at a consistently, middle of the SEC, kind of upper middle level. It feels a little bit streaky. I think they obviously play better at home, but just like the frustrations around not being able to have offensive production, I think against guys outside of Kyson Witherspoon is what kind of bothers, I think, SEC fans of Ole Miss. And just kind of, it's like, we've seen Ole Miss do this against good pitching. We've seen it do it against Vanderbilt last week. So that was probably the biggest notice and takeaway for me was that on the offensive side for them.
Harrison, side note, kind of a random thought. Do Oklahoma and Ole Miss not feel like the most middle of the pack teams in the SEC? Like if you told me define a middle of the pack SEC team, like what Oklahoma and Ole Miss are this season, are like, they are that to a T, where it's like on any given weekend, they can beat anybody, but they're just, it's like they kind of are what they are. And that's like, that's not a negative at all, but they are firmly, like, we know what tier these two teams are in. Like, I don't think there's any question.
100%. I think they're the most, they're just staple of this season for the middle of the pack. The SEC is Oklahoma and Ole Miss because of those things. And, I think it's not a bad thing because you're playing consistent ball, but like
pretty high floor, but
pretty high floor. Maybe it's a little lower.
Ceiling and floor are really close to each other. Yeah.
Yeah, which isn't bad because, you can burst through that ceiling, or obviously you can drop a little bit below the floor, but I think more so the opportunity to burst through the ceiling for both of these clubs. Talk about Ole Miss. A lot of their stats are middle of the pack, batting average, slugging, they're, 4th in the SEC, 5th in on-base percentage, runs scored, they're 5th, as well. And then you look at walks. I think they had 8 walks in this series as a whole, which, sounds like a lot, but it's not necessarily. It's 4, 2, and 2 throughout the games. They lead the SEC in walks, 230 walks. So, not getting a lot of those to take advantage of. And, it's one of those things that I think Ole Miss could either sleepwalk into the postseason or kind of burst on the scene in the postseason. Just kind of how, if they just get to some pitchers and play hot baseball and, play, I guess, supplementary baseball to when, guys are getting them over and getting them in. But I think obviously it's going to be predicated on the pitching staff outside of Hunter Elliott and just giving you, quality starts, obviously with Riley Maddox focused, but then, guys holding the line coming out of the bullpen, like Walker Hooks and others around him. But I think it's like the same thing you could say for Oklahoma. It's like, what is the season's kind of predicated on the pitching staff production outside of Kyson Witherspoon. So we'll see what you get, but I think they're very, very similar teams. It's going to be postseason length is going to be depending on, who's playing hot and how it kind of falls, opponent wise and where they're going to play.
Yeah, I think a pair of middle-of-the-pack teams that, because they've gone through this SEC grind, obviously going to be well-seasoned and ready. They're both potentially to go on a run in the postseason.
They're both probably projected to be 2 seeds, right? Would you say?
I think Oklahoma might be right on that hosting line.
We'll see.
Last 2 weekends are going to go a long way, but I think Oklahoma might be on that hosting line. Yeah, well, the This is a postseason projection season.
Is there maybe a boost for them, subconsciously boost for them to host being first year in the SEC?
I don't know. I think just the overall resume. I mean, again, I'm just going off the projections I've seen. So I think they're right on. I think they're right on the cusp. Right on.
Yeah. I mean, they don't play, as great at home as I feel like they should.
Yeah. L. Dale Mitchell deserves better. Harrison, let's move to Starkville, Mississippi. The Dude, where Mississippi State takes 2 of 3 against Kentucky. And Harrison, don't look now. The Dogs are hot. The Dogs are hot. 4-0 in the Justin Parker era. 2 of those games being via run rule. All of a sudden, Harrison, Mississippi State is a team that I think we have to talk about. And this feels like we saw this coming. You fire Chris Lemonis after you drop 2 of 3 at Auburn. And it felt like I said, Harrison, I'm not going to be surprised. And you flipped your pick last minute, right? At the Dude, which, by the way, their 3-game attendance over this past weekend, highest of the college baseball season. I think they had something like 38,000 or 39,000 people there over the weekend.
Against Kentucky.
Against Kentucky.
They're going to break it next week, Chris.
A brand new sense of energy, a brand new sense of hope and optimism. The Dogs are officially hot. The Dogs are officially hot. By the way, am I wrong? Did State sweep this?
They did.
They did. I'm sorry. I apologize. State swept this. Why did I say take 2 of 3? I don't know why I typed that. That was a brain fart. Either way, State sweeps Kentucky. Let me correct myself here. So the Dogs are red hot. And what a weekend it was, Harrison. I mean, you had great pitching performances. You had 2 insane web gems. Michael O'Brien might have had the catch of the season, or at least one of them. Harrison, talk to me about the Dogs, man. The Diamond Dogs. All of a sudden, we might be talking about them being a contender for the postseason.
Yeah, and Chris, think about it. In game 1, you blow out Kentucky 14-4. And it was Pico Khan going 5 2/3, giving up 4 runs, 3 earned. To do that, I mean, he obviously didn't have his best stuff at all. I mean, we've seen him. I think that's maybe one of his, 2 or 3 worst starts of the year. And you still go out there and you basically run rule a team. You put up 10. You put up an 8th spot in the 6th, and it's just on the backs of just next man up, next man up, next man up. Next man up right now, it's Justin Parker, and he's leading these Dogs back to the postseason in front of the Dude. I think playing the Dude this weekend was huge for them too. You talk about how, they have a run rule victory in the midweek. 1-0 in the Justin Parker era right now as an interim. I think it was more important for them to play at home this weekend. If they would have been at Kentucky, could have been maybe a sleepwalk, right? But obviously they take care of business at home. I think the standard is the standard at Mississippi State, and that is postseason baseball and getting back to Omaha, especially after winning a national championship. I think that maybe there's the guys that in the locker room as a team are kind of playing with a little bit of, less, I don't want to say less stress, but
they're loose. The guys are loose.
Yeah, a little bit more loose and just like, hey, new season starts now. We're still in the hunt. And when it gets to the postseason, anything can happen. When you do that, it feels like guys just, aren't just tense up there. Not just like, worried about making mistakes. And, obviously want to play. They all go out there and play at their best level, but it's just kind of something's different, right? It doesn't matter what is it. Like I said with Texas A&M, Caden Sorrell coming back, rejuvenation, just something like that can flip a switch for teams. It could be playing back at home. It could be, the coach situation. It could be, just a guy coming back from injury, whatever it is. But when you do that and you have guys that, can produce in the lineup like they did throughout the entire weekend, and, you support the struggling starts that they had with, Evan Sierra had 5 earned in just over 3 innings as well. It's just like that was the most important thing for them. And just the biggest takeaway for me was, backing up bad starts they had all weekend. It felt like, I mean, Carson Ligon goes 3 innings, 1 earned, and it's kind of a bullpen game after that, which guys like Ben Davis really stepped up and Luke Dotson really stepped up. And it's just like, hey, the offense took this under their wing, said, we got it this weekend. We're at home, no better place we want to play. And, Sanders took that personally too in game 3. I mean, game 2. I mean, it was just interesting to see. And just, I think really good for the momentum for them this season that, hey, like we don't have to rely on really good starts, especially from Pico, that, in game 3, Sanders can, have production at the bottom of the lineup. You have, other guys throughout the lineup produce. When Ace Reese isn't producing, right? He goes 1 for 5 in game 2. He goes 1 for 4 in game 1. You have Hunter Hines stepping up because he's such a veteran in that clubhouse that, it's going to take, I think, more than most teams for Mississippi State to go on a deep run because of just the highs and lows that they've had this season, offensive production wise, pitching staff wise. But Justin Parker has everything turning in the right direction for them to go in a postseason, make the postseason first off, which they still not, I don't think, guaranteed to do, but they have all the tools and the ability. And Chris, maybe peaking at the right time, maybe getting hot at the right time. I mean, they are 10-14 in conference. They're 20-7 at home. Obviously, that's super helpful. 6-9 on the road. That's gonna be one of the toughest things, just winning on the road. And I think they're at a point where they need to win on the road. And anything can happen in the SEC, Chris. And there's enough time left for them to do that, especially with the tournament.
And Harrison, they're 10-14 in conference play, and let's not forget they close out the season with Mississippi State they close out the season with Mizzou at the Dude. So yep. I mean, you get to that 13-win SEC mark, I think you're a postseason team. The biggest takeaway here, once again, the Dogs are hot. The Dogs are hot. And this is a dangerous team, assuming they get in the postseason. Again, I've talked to SEC coaches. They think this team is very good. I mean, from the starting rotation.
I've been big on them for a while, analytically.
There's holes in the lineup. There's some holes in the lineup, but this is a dangerous team. Dude, glad you flipped your pick. Very smart of you, Harrison, last week. Boys are playing loose. You're not trying to save anybody's job anymore. You can go out there. There's no pressure. I think that's what we saw over the weekend, man.
Throw them in the middle of the pack conversation, the SEC. I mean, when you look at statistically, they're 6th in batting average, which doesn't feel like they should be at all. They're middle of the pack, slugging, on base, runs scored, hits, everything. They're middle of the pack, like anywhere from that 6 to 10 range. So, their ceiling and floor are very similar. We talked about. I think that their floor has been a little bit lower, but I mean, it's all about playing well in May and being healthy and playing your best ball then. So, I mean, they're starting to do that, and their schedule lines up perfectly for them to end on such a high note and a hot streak.
They remind me of that Bama team a few years ago where their coach got fired because of the gambling stuff or whatever. And they went on a heater. Yeah, they went on a heater, made the postseason. Could State do the same thing? I think the opportunity is certainly there. And then Kentucky, man, again, I think just ran into a buzzsaw at the Dude, man. I mean, and Kentucky is sort of – they sort of are what they are. I mean, the Cats, they're also sitting at 10-14 in conference play. Certainly going to be a postseason team, but it always felt like to me, Harrison, like State was the obvious pick here with the firing of Chris Lemonis, the way I thought these guys were going to respond to that. And again, 4-0 in the Justin Parker era with
Kentucky's, I think, season obviously revolves around, clean, like good quality pitching, clean defense, and stolen bases. When they're not getting quality starts from their pitchers, their starters, it's really puts them in a hole, and hard to the style which they play to, come back necessarily. And there's great scrap and fight and claw, but like when you have, Nick McKay, who's been a really under the radar starter in the SEC, going, 6, but he gives up 5 runs, 4 earned. And then you got Ben Cleaver, who's a really good guy for them as well in the game 3, give up 4, and their offense not be able to produce at a high level offensively, doubles home run wise. It's hard for them to do that, especially on the road. In the Dude, like you said, situation wise, it just felt like Mississippi State.
Yeah, Mississippi State. The Dogs are officially hot.
The Dogs are out.
The Dogs are out. Dogs are hot. It's heating up, baby. That time of year. Speaking of a team getting hot, Harrison, let's go to Columbia, South Carolina, where the Florida Gators swept South Carolina at Founders Park. And all of a sudden, Kevin O'Sullivan's club, which congratulations to Sully picking up his 750th win over the weekend. But Harrison, the Gators have become one of the SEC's best stories. They are 10-2 in SEC play since starting the season, 1-11, now sitting 11-13 in conference play, putting themselves right in the conversation, right squarely in the conversation of making the postseason. Harrison, this is another one, really weird weather-impacted weekend. There was a lot of chirping from Florida about South Carolina's decision to start the game in game one. Liam Peterson goes out there. I think he threw 5 pitches before they delayed that.
It was under 10.
It was under 10 pitches before they delayed.
7. It was 7.
7 pitches before they delayed that game. He then ends up coming back on Sunday. Again, a bunch of weather delays throughout the weekend. Gators explode in this one, though, Harrison. It was 3-0 South Carolina in game one at one point. Gators outscore South Carolina 39-5. After that, over the next 2 3/4 games, if you will. A lot of rumors here today and since Sunday evening, Harrison, about Paul Maneri. Will he be stepping down? Will South Carolina fire him? I mean, the rumor mill is running crazy right now. Obviously, as of this moment, we have not seen anything. And from the people I've talked to, I actually just got a text, ironically enough. It sounds like it's just a rumor and nothing's happening right now. But, Harrison, this program is essentially at its lowest point, it feels like, in quite some time. South Carolina suffering their worst loss in that game 2. 22-3 was the final. That's South Carolina's worst loss since 1997. And the worst SEC finish in program history is 8-22. The Gamecocks sit 5-19 with 2 weekends to go, squarely staring down the worst conference finish in program history. But Harrison, I want to spend the most of the time obviously focusing on Florida. Gator boys stay hot, and the Gator boys are officially hot on the diamond. By the way, huge part of this series, Pierce Kapala returns, throws an inning. He was up to 94, 95, they said, looked really good. Control, a little bit of an issue, which is what you'd expect. The kid hadn't pitched since Miami when we were down there early in the season, but getting him back is huge. Liam Peterson coming back on Sunday, pitched really well. And the offense, Harrison, just picked on what is obviously one of the worst pitching staffs in the conference. But Florida heating up, Harrison, should scare everyone else in college baseball. I mean, if you get Florida as a 2 or a 3 in your regional, have fun with that.
Yeah, especially when you have a lineup that they have, like they can produce. Like,
Luke and Heyman by the way, I don't mean to cut you off, but by the way, I should mention they did all of this without Colby Shelton in the lineup.
Yeah, I was about to say, when you're getting production in the lineup, from like guys like Luke Heyman, Ty Evans, who are completely different parts of the order, let alone, Bobby Bowser, and you're doing it without Colby Shelton. Dude, I mean, you have
Ty Evans doing what he does best, which is heating up late in the season. He had a monster weekend.
Yeah, I mean, 4 RBIs in game 1. I mean, what do you have?
Hit a grand slam in game 1.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the way that you do that, and you have, Hayden Yost, who has a great series as well. I think he had 5 or 6 RBIs himself, and you are 7 or 8 maybe actually RBIs, I think. But you have guys that are producing, and Florida, I think what I'm impressed about most was just the production from the bottom half of the lineup. With guys like a little bit of Brody Donay, Hayden Yost, Ashton Wilson, guys like that are going to be crucial. We talk about how important. I emphasize how important his production throughout the lineup, let alone 1, 2, 3, 4 guys. But to do that, and I think obviously that, I guess it was technically game 1 they've resumed later that got blown out, right? That game got out of hand in a hurry, super late in the game, which was just a interesting, unique situation, which we can talk about.
It was game 2 that was 22-3. The scheduling was weird, but I think it was game 2.
The whole weather situation.
Game 1 of the doubleheader, game 2 of the series. It was a very weird, wacky.
Yes. So just to clarify that, thank you. But just getting production, from the bottom half of the lineup. And it wasn't even like they had to rely on that, because you have Brendan Lawson put up 5 ribbies in, game 2. And I mean, just the production that this lineup can produce is so much higher than what it seems like they've had the first half of the season, Chris. Injuries or not, just heating up, cooling down. I mean, maybe it was a short hot, at the beginning of the season for Florida, a long cold in the middle, and then heating up at the right time. I mean, they're 10-2 in the SEC play, and they're since starting 1-11, Chris. Think about how tough that is to do. Yes, the schedule, you can say, but they took 2 of 3 from Arkansas, who just swept number 1 Texas at home for Arkansas. I mean, just impressive to do so. And, Kevin O'Sullivan can never count him out, Chris. Never count him out. The talent that Florida recruits, Chris, year after year, it feels like it's just top tier in the SEC. We've seen it. They get a ton of other guys. They really maximize and develop players very well. I think the pitching staff, like you said, with Pierce Caballa coming back is going to be really important, and just how much, length you can get from him next week. And obviously playing at Texas, we can get to that obviously later in the week when we preview all the series. But, Jackson Barbie, I mean, he looked really sharp too. I think doing that, Rodriguez coming out after him to get the save and going 2 2/3 to get a save, Chris. I know it's against a South Carolina team that hasn't produced a lot of offensive production, but to still come out and do that on the road, I don't think, you can take for granted. So, a lot of great takeaways for Florida throughout the entire lineup, the pitching staff as well. Still things to work on, I think, more so on the pitching staff, but trending in the right direction, the right time, Chris. And that's as close to the postseason. You want to be able to do that and get guys healthy, which they're starting to get guys, back on track and back in the lineup and back on the mound.
I think a key for them too, Harrison, I want to highlight Jake Clemente coming out of the bullpen.
He's been a staple for them.
You give credit to that kid, I think, Harrison, from the standpoint of being willing to move out of the starting rotation and take on a different role. Like Harrison, it's hard to change your role, kind of almost reinvent yourself in the middle of the season. This wasn't something that happened in the fall or before the season. I mean, this dude's in the rotation. They have injuries pop up like, hey, man, we need you out of the bullpen. I mean, you think about this past weekend. Again, I know it was the South Carolina lineup, but, dude, a couple bases loaded situations. He strikes out the side, gets out of it, keeps the momentum on Florida side. He has been such a huge piece for them out of the pen. I think he's going to continue to be so. That's a huge key in the cog of this thing with Florida. So I think that kid deserves a lot of credit for being willing, embracing the role. And it looks like a natural fit, because even as a starter, Harrison, on Sundays, he was a guy you were really struggling to get like even 5 innings out of. So I think using him as a 2 or 3 inning guy out of the pen seems like a natural fit. But kudos to the kid for embracing it. And he's pitched. I mean, dude, his stuff is nasty. I mean, it's really good.
I mean, I think he's been really humble and kind of, taking this on this role now in the bullpen, obviously, and just really took it and ran with it and say, hey, I'm going to focus on what's important now. And that's, mastering and doing, coming out here and executing as much as I can out of the bullpen, being a stopper, being a closer, whatever he needs to do in whatever role. Jake Clemente feels very similar to what Max Grubbs is for Texas. Certain situations out of the bullpen, first guy out, last guy out, go 2-3 innings. I mean, Chris, he threw 3 innings, 4 hits, 6 Ks, no earned. And then, another he goes later in the series, 2 innings shutout, no hits, 4 Ks. I mean, just be able to do that, twice in a weekend, that's what Max Grubbs does for Texas and why he's been so effective and just a staple for that Texas bullpen. Jake Clemente is a staple for this Florida bullpen, an important piece that's going to be super important. He's going to pitch in a lot of high leverage situations, Chris. He's going to be, if you remember last year, he's kind of a Brandon Neely, just coming out there, slamming the door. He's the guy out of the bullpen. He's the guy who's going to give you length and give you multiple styles of, if it's a 2-batter situation, or if he needs to go 3 or 4 out of a short start after, let's say Aiden King goes 2 2/3 again, obviously he can come out of that, give you that length. But the whole situation, obviously with the weather, Liam Peterson, follows Aiden King after, and just that, I think, is kind of just, put an asterisk a little bit on that, how that was kind of styled. And obviously we know Sullivan was not happy and pleased with that. And I wouldn't expect that to happen again.
Dude, I mean, Florida wasn't. Liam Peterson, they said, tossed the ball like at the dugout and was chirping the dugout, and
rightfully so.
Yeah, it was quite heated.
But I think it's going to be important for him. Obviously he's that centerpiece of the bullpen, and going forward and leading kind of the expectation out of the bullpen for Florida going into the postseason.
Harrison, I've voiced a lot of opinions on Paul Mainieri, and South Carolina baseball will continue to do so. I'm really curious your thoughts on a lot of rumors surfacing. I mean, we'll see if anything happens, obviously, whether it's right now, it's end of season, about him potentially stepping down, being fired. We had the quote last week from him about, I didn't know how tough the league was. And, you get a quote from him after the game yesterday, and I'm paraphrasing, but essentially like, I don't know what else we can do. Like, we're just going to kind of keep going out there. Again, I've made my comments, my thoughts, Harrison, very well known. I'm curious your take on that South Carolina program, where they sit, and the Paul Mainieri situation.
Yeah, the South Carolina program on the diamond right now it's really been a shell of what it used to be, what it was 15 years ago. I mean, obviously they were at the mountaintop and stayed at the mountaintop for longer than most teams do, if they even get there. But it's one of those things, like we talk about Mississippi State, being the standard of being Omaha, right? Like, I don't think any team can say the standard is Omaha. you can say it for a period of time, but you can't say it for the entire program for as long as you live and follow the team that the standard is Omaha because of how hard it is. Yes, Kevin O'Sullivan, for example, has been to Omaha more times than he hasn't. That is an outlier. That is a national. That is just not, a normal common thing. You don't ever really see that at all. But for South Carolina, what this program is right now compared to, I think what it's been historically, even we talk about South Carolina Clemson being the best rivalry in college baseball. It just doesn't feel like as intense a rivalry, even though, the games are intense and the guys don't like each other. You have coaches that have gone from one side to the other. You have players that have gone from one side to the other transferring. It just feels like that the South Carolina program doesn't have an identity right now. I think that's kind of the best way to put it. And it's just kind of have free fallen in the SEC since Chad Holbrook left, honestly. Because I think Mark Kingston, did a little bit with the Holbrook roster and recruiting as well. And, I think they made that super regional getting out of UNCW's regional that first year. And then just kind of after that, it's just been like, I think the kind of culture, the kind of chemistry, the environment is, it's all been accumulation of things that I think also led to a really weird hire because it felt like a friendly hire. We've talked about that from Ray Tanner and the relationship he has with Paul Maneri. And then it felt like a bridge hire. You have the situation with A&M, for example, when, everyone's saying all the players and, whatnot, we want Michael Early. All the players at South Carolina wanted Monty Lee. And I think that's why they kept him on the staff. I mean, you look at what he's getting paid. It's, I think, maybe the highest assistant coach in the SEC by far. Like, it's almost to a head coaching pay. And I think that it was just a weird situation that got just kind of more knots in the rope, I guess, and has made things kind of prolonged, fixing things long-term on a higher level. And it, like I said, it felt like a bridge hire for 2 years at most, let alone one. But then, you have Ray Tanner stepping down and how that's kind of handled. And then the comments from Paul Maneri about, I didn't think the SEC was this difficult or kind of like we say it's a gauntlet for a reason, the SEC is. And so that, and then when we were shocked when they hired him in general, because he was not on the recruiting hot boards or anything for coaches, the coaching hot boards at all. But it was like, yeah, he's a legacy. He is one of the best head coaches, with what he's done at LSU and national championships there, but such a different day and age, I think, for college baseball as a whole. Offensively, it's just a offensive, doubles home run league in college baseball for a sense, honestly, as a whole. And then guys throwing absolute smoke with just insane off speed, all for strikes. That's what the league has turned into. It's way different than when he was at LSU. And so add the portal on top of that, Chris, add NIL on top of that. It was like, what is the expectation in length? What was it, a 3-year deal? It was like maybe 2 as a bridge, but like, it just feels like this bridge hire hasn't worked. Is it worth going through another year of it if this is kind of going to be the same result? The standard at South Carolina would and should say no, but it should be, let's rebuild and get this back to kind of, upper tier 2, low tier 1 of the SEC. And it's going to take a little bit of time to do so. But I don't know how long it's going to take, but I think, steps need to be taken towards that. And with a new AD, I don't know what what the leash is on that, kind of letting the rope out, but I don't expect Paul Maneri to be there all 3 years of his contract.
And I'm going to echo something, Harrison, that I think you make a lot of great points. I commend you on that. I'm going to say something. I'm going to echo something I said previously. And I'm a big Ray Tanner guy. And the dude wins back-to-back national titles. Like you said, Harrison, like he made South Carolina baseball one of the truly like elite programs of the sport. I think the Paul Maneri hiring, and especially him dipping out like 2 months later and handing over the AD job, I think it assures he is the worst athletic director in South Carolina history. Like, it's crazy to think about the guy who played such a key role, the most important role in elevating South Carolina baseball to the mountaintop, is also the one I could argue that is responsible for driving it into the gutter. Like, when you really think about it, I think the Holbrook hire made a ton of sense. I don't think that was a bad hire. That's not.
I thought the Holbrook fire was weird.
You could argue that. I think that's very.
I've talked to SEC coaches, Chris, that have said 15 wins in the SEC is a really good season.
Yeah, hindsight
15 wins.
hindsight's
doing that every year, and it
2020.
just wasn't enough.
Yeah, hindsight's 2020, but I do agree with you. But the back-to-back hirings of Mark Kingston and then obviously this Paul Maneri thing, which really South Carolina folks have a right to be very upset about this because it really like when you're like let's be honest, it feels like a really like greedy, selfish hire from both guys. Paul Maneri's a has-been. Paul Maneri is washed up. Like, let's please just be honest about that. He is. Yes, he's won 1,500 games. Bro, those wins came over a decade ago, man. Like, those wins, you know, I know he was coaching in LSU in like 2021, I think it was. But, like, he is the definition of a has-been in college baseball. And so, at best, like you said, at best, it was a bridge hire. At worst, it was a desperate attempt at some shot in the arm of bringing relevancy back to what has been a dead program over the last few years. And I think if you're South Carolina, from the fan base to the administration, you need to have the humility to understand this program, like you said, it's not even a shell of a shell. It is not even remotely what it once was. This program has fallen off a cliff. You need to do yourself the service. Fire Paul Maneri. For the love of God, fire Monty Lee. Just completely clean house, start over, go get a young guy like a Skylar Meade, like a Justin Parker, somebody who's willing to come in, embrace the job for what it is right now, not what it was, what it is right now, who's willing to rebuild and take the next 4 or 5 years to try to build this program back to a level of respectability because it is nowhere near that right now. That is the reality of what the job is, what the program is. South Carolina, the sooner they cut ties with Paul Maneri, the better. Because this thing's going nowhere. Like you said, Harrison, what is the point in bringing Paul Maneri back? To probably do this all over again next year. Like, what is he going to do next year that he hadn't done this year?
That's my thing.
The guy's not in it for the long haul. He never was.
He's what, 68?
Yeah, I mean, dude, he even said at his introductory press conference, like, this is a 1-year plan. This isn't a 2 or a 3 or a 5-year plan. It's a 1-year plan. If that's the case, you've seen all you need to see in 1 year. South Carolina needs to cut ties. There's no loyalty or ties between Maneri and South Carolina. He's an LSU guy.
Well,
and
Chris,
Maneri feels the same way about the
his buyout too.
Well, and so that's what some people are saying. Like, will Maneri step down and walk away and save South Carolina the buyout? Why would he do that? What does he owe South Carolina?
Yeah.
I mean, nothing.
Especially Ray Tanner not there.
I mean, dude, Ray Tanner did his buddy a favor. Like let's just, that's what he did. And then Ray Tanner has, and he should catch flack for this, I think. Then he has the audacity to step down and hand this over to the new athletic director and make it his problem. Listen, everybody knows I've got a history with South Carolina. Bad leadership is why the University of South Carolina has never really won anything of substance. And it's why South Carolina has been a mediocre program in the SEC. It starts at the top, and that's what's haunted the university for years on end. And Ray Tanner is just the latest example of that.
It starts with leadership, support. You know, I think it's support in multiple facets. Obviously, one of them being financial support with especially NIL now, the portal and everything. But I mean, I want South Carolina to be good at baseball again. I think baseball was great when South Carolina was great at baseball. The rivalry against Clemson, with Clemson being really good too. But South Carolina baseball at the top is great for college baseball and great for the SEC, let alone the depth of the SEC. And I want to see it get back to that. But it starts, I think, with buy-in, leadership, and just knowing, like having just a head coach who, I don't know if it's, you go the assistant coach route. That's, a guy that's ready to be a head coach, or, a guy that's proven it as a head coach at a, different program, whether it's ACC, SEC, or mid-major or not. But it's a guy that, understands the role and the situation of where it is now and is able to, play the game that college baseball is now as a head coach, because it's night and day difference from when Paul Maneri was at LSU and, how he was so successful. Completely different type of recruiting landscape, everything. And for South Carolina to get back to that mountaintop, I think they can. I think South Carolina is a kind of sleeping giant to get back to kind of rebuild that program into a, I'm not going to say a dynasty, but to, an elite contender in the SEC every year. I think they're a sleeping giant to do so. And it's going to take the right coach to do that. And I think there's going to be a lot of really talented, really great coaches, head coach and assistant coaches across the country that are going to be wanting this job and, wanting the support to be there as well before they hit the job. But I think, like I said, I think it's a sleeping giant to build back and, rebuild this program into a contender in the SEC every single year. And I don't think it's that far off of it. It starts with leadership and buy-in, like I said, but also winning the recruiting battle, which South Carolina can do in the Carolinas.
We both agree. This program far removed from where it used to be, probably what it should be. It's one thing to have a rocky year one of a new head coach. It's another to just be as terrible as they are, 5-19 in conference play, and being swept 4 times in conference play. Either way, Harrison, let's keep it moving, close it out here. Missouri and Georgia. Georgia goes on the road, and it was close at times. I thought maybe Mizzou in game 3 might have them, but Georgia gets the sweep. Slate Alford saving the day in that game. Some notable pitching performances from Georgia studs on the mound. I thought Curley was really good. Leighton Finley was really good. Missouri moves to 0-24 in conference play in Harrison. My under 3.5 is going to be a cash, and the question only remains, is Missouri going to complete the defeated season and go 0-30 in conference play? I think the answer is yes right now. Again, they are, what did I say? They are at Texas A&M and Mississippi State at home. I think 0-30 is going to happen, Harrison. Anyways, your thoughts on what you saw from Georgia? Because there were some close games, but hey, the Dogs do something they hadn't done a ton of. Go on the road and swing it a little bit.
Yeah, Chris, and I mean, I'll join you in that bet because my under a 4.5 that I said 4, I think is the best bet of the season.
Yeah, we ain't getting to 3, we ain't getting to 4. Yeah.
But I mean, I think it was good for Georgia. This is kind of like I said, it was going to be a go execute, take care of business, and really build back some confidence of swinging on the road and pitching well, because this was a time to do so. Because after this weekend, they got 2 tough series coming up, I think, that are going to be a little under the radar. I think maybe less so when A&M comes in the end of the season, but then it's postseason. You're not going to face anything like this. You're going to face teams monumentally better than Missouri, all respects to Missouri, where they are right now as a program. But I think it was really good, like you said. I think swinging a little bit more so, early in the series, but I think Brian Curley giving you 7 innings, going 96 pitches. I mean, I think that's probably the longest he's been in his this season. But
that's got to be the longest. That's got to be the longest outing by a Georgia starter.
100% has to be the longest outing for a Georgia starter this season.
Yeah.
But to go no walks in the 7 innings, scattering 4 hits, I think the no walks is the most impressive stuff and thing for me out of his outing, because we know he's got really good arsenal on elite fastball, 6 Ks. But I think the 0 walks was the biggest thing for me. And then obviously, like you said, Leighton Finley going 7 1/3 and, creating the now new longest start for a starting pitcher at Georgia this season. But 8 punch outs, 2 walks, 3 hits, only 1 earned run. I mean, I think it was good for him, and he needed that too. 93 pitches. I think that, building up, they have to have length out their starts. We talked about this for quite a while this season, because you can't rely on the bullpen in the postseason that much, because you're going to play, 2-3 games in a row, especially if they, decide and, go on a run in Hoover in the SEC tournament. You can't just throw guys every single day like this, but I think this was a good opportunity for them to do so. Alton Davis, I think, looked really good. He just continues to go, 1 inning here. JT Quinn looked really good and sharp. He was crisp in his outing, nearly flawless. But I think the offensive production on the road still scares me, because you really couldn't do it outside of game 1 against Missouri. I mean, you had 4 in the 9th. So let's say take out the 9th inning. It's 5-1. I mean, it's Missouri. This is Georgia. This is this Georgia team. I mean, I think that still worries me, because think about it, Chris. If Missouri could hold Georgia to, 5 runs, and then in game 3, 4 runs, thanks to 2 of them from Slate Alford, who saved Missouri's season, in the 9th inning, that still worries me. We never thought we'd worry about Georgia's offense this season, Chris. And
the transitive property is finicky, though. But I get what you're saying on the road. Georgia's scary on the road.
It's a good thing Georgia's going to host a regional and maybe a super, because that's going to be their best shot to get the Omaha. Because if they don't host a regional, which obviously I don't think they won't, but if they don't host a super, and they have to go play with, say, Florida State, at Texas, maybe, they're going to play Arkansas. Maybe they have to go play Oregon or UNC or LSU or Clemson, or hell, maybe even Vanderbilt again. I mean, it's not going to be like, okay, Georgia's got a great path to, Omaha. It's going to be, all right, Georgia's got to go on the road and face a super regional team with good pitching. That's the biggest worry. And I think that the pitching staff took care of business and did what I said they should and need to do. I think, obviously I thought more guys would get opportunities just because I didn't think you'd get 14 innings out of Brian Curley and Leighton Finley, but still worries me about the hitting. But we know it's there. We know the offense production is there through the lineup. It's just do it on the road. You got to do it on the road. It's because Omaha's on the road. You're not playing Omaha in Foley Field. You can't feed the trees there. And I don't think Georgia fans, as crazy as they are going to, get some trees from Foley, unroot them, drive them up to Omaha and plant them there and then take them back after.
I was going to say, I don't think there are many trees in Omaha, period. So at least around TD Ameritrade, they might be like in the city, but there's not, I don't think there's any like in the stadium.
Oh no, like I said, the offense production's there. It's just not, it's been a shell of itself on the road versus.
Yeah. It's weird. They're split. It's weird. They're splits home and away. Cause again, they've just been so good at home, but yeah, it does. I don't think a whole lot changes from that standpoint. Like you said, Harrison, I mean, it's encouraging to see what you saw from the arms, but they just, I don't know, man. They got to find a way to swing it away from home. We don't worry. They're going to host a regional. Will they be a top 8? I think that's the bigger question. Who do they close out? I know they host A&M last
Alabama
year.
at Alabama
at Bama. That's right. So listen, another opportunity on the road. We'll see. We'll see. I don't know.
It's a team that's struggling too.
Yeah, and then Missouri, like we said, I'm taking the bet, Harrison. I think 0-30 is happening.
Do they win one or no? You're thinking that you're
I'm going right now 0-30. But
under
again,
half an SEC.
Math would tell you they're going to win one. But my goodness, again, like we said, the pressure now of playing Mizzou. I don't think this is just getting ahead of it on Thursday. I don't think they win one in College Station. Now, do they beat Mississippi State in a game? I'm not banking on it, but I think that'd probably be their best shot. But
Chris, Missouri to get ahead of it. I mean, they got to go Tuesday and play they play Kansas at home, team that just fell at top 25.
Yeah, good luck with that. So historically,
just know, Chris, that the Missouri baseball schedule has TBA. They have SEC tournament TBA. They have regional TBA, super regional TBA, and college World Series TBA. So
TBA
those blocks.
Yeah. Hey, listen, never know. Hoover does weird things. Could go on a run. Harrison, let's move on. We're going to talk a little midweek. Before we do, I want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. Because as always, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The wait is over. Baseball season's finally here, and you can start the season strong on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, FanDuel is celebrating the return of baseball by giving new customers $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to get on the action, from hits to steals to home runs. They got a lineup filled with all of your favorite bets. Or if pitching is more of your thing, FanDuel has a deep bullpen of bets, from strikeouts to shutout innings. So when you place your first bet, it can be on almost anything, and if it hits, you'll get $250 in bonus bets. Just visit FanDuel.com/SECU to join today. That's FanDuel.com/SECU. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Must be 21 and up and present in select states. For Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 and up and present in D.C. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expires 7 days after receipt. Restricted to apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org. Call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Harrison, let's first talk the top 25. Latest D1 baseball top 25 has been released. Want to get your thoughts on this? Texas stays in the #1 spot, which a lot of SEC fans are kicking and screaming about today. The rest of your top 10 looks like this. Florida State jumps to 2. LSU falls to 3. North Carolina 4. Oregon 5. Georgia at 6. Arkansas at 7. Auburn at 8. Clemson at 9. Oregon State at 10. The rest of the SEC ranked: Vanderbilt at number 11. Tennessee at number 15. Oklahoma 17. Alabama 23. And Ole Miss at 24. Harrison, did they get it right keeping Texas at number 1?
Yeah, I think so, just because, I think it would have been a big jump for Florida State to do so if they swept Clemson. I think you put them at 1, but I think, with LSU losing the series and then Arkansas playing, tight games at Missouri, I mean, it's one of the things, like, how much movement do you put in it late in the season? So I think, they did the right thing of not making too much movement or noise in the rankings. But what I think is kind of interesting is seeing, Oregon State still up there. I think that just, I don't know what to make of Oregon State, really. I think they're a little overrated, maybe, just with, I think part of it, how their kind of scheduling thing falls into place. But, sleepwalking up there, I guess, from an outside perspective is West Virginia, Chris. They just continue to sneak up there in the rankings every week, it feels like. And pushing top 12, they're in the top 12 now. It's interesting to see. And, I don't know. I think it's a really sound rankings throughout because you have a lot of diversity with the SEC, ACC. You have,
some West Coast.
You got some West Coast power in there and UC Irvine. You got, West Virginia back there. You got Coastal Carolina now, top 14.
Coastal Carolina's back. Coastal's back.
Maybe they're back. And then you got Troy there too. But I think Bama maybe interests me the most of being at 23. I guess. I think if Ole Miss, wins that series against Oklahoma, they're in a different spot, obviously. But I don't know. I don't have any problems with it at all.
Yeah, I think keeping Texas in the number one spot for this week was the right move. I know there's a lot of fans in the SEC that disagree.
Again, I think it's the first time, Chris, that the number one team in the nation has gotten swept on the road and stayed at number one. It probably has to.
Well, I think you just don't want to overreact to one weekend, which, by the way, I did see, I think it was on the Texas-Arkansas telecast, per D1 Baseball, this is the most, I think at
most
this point,
start of teams they've had
at start of May, the most
2015.
Yes, most different number one. So it's the number one team is you almost don't want the number one ranking because seems like everybody that's gotten number one has found struggles shortly
thereafter.
They've had
5 different teams ranked number one before May 1st, the first time since D1 Baseball began poll in 2015.
There you go. So it's I don't know if being number one is the ultimate goal this season just because of the like I said, what's come with it. Everybody sort of struggled once they've gotten it.
All that matters, Chris, is being top 8.
That's it. All that matters is being top 8. So, Harrison, moving off this before we jump into midweek really quickly, because I know we're running long on this show. That's how you know the postseason's close. I pose a simple question to you, and I want to get your thoughts, and I know you have a lot of them. Does the SEC have an umpiring problem that it needs to address? Give me a yes or no here. Don't float in the middle on this.
I think they slightly do have an umpiring problem they need to address because it just feels like this year more than any other has been, there's one thing that's like, oh, he missed a call here and there, but it just feels like there's too many missed calls in too many games, especially ones that are, I feel like, more meaningful calls. It's like, oh, ball off the plate, called a strike. It just feels like bigger impact misses this season more so than others, and it's across the entire league. It's not just one team or, beginning of the season. It feels like the entire kind of SEC as a whole. And I don't know necessarily how you kind of fix that. I don't have the answer to that, but it's one thing I think I've noticed for sure. And a lot of SEC Twitter for sure has noticed, let alone fans at games. So
Harrison, this was a bad weekend for SEC.
This was a bad example too. I think the weather impact too, with how the umpires handling that situation as well was.
And then just the calls. You posted so many of the screenshots, like from Tennessee, Auburn, Arkansas, Texas.
Yeah,
we got a home plate umpire not being willing to. That was the most egregious when he's not willing to check down the line on one check swing. Chris, but then he checks on the other one that was way worse.
Yeah. Chris, maybe one way to fix it, hear me out, umpire post-game press conferences. Hold them accountable.
You hold them accountable for sure.
We need SEC umpiring scorecards post-game. I haven't seen any, but I would like to see that. Get some ratings. Get some grades.
I'll keep it very short and sweet. The SEC has an umpiring problem it needs to address. The idea that the biggest and best conference in the land doesn't have full-time paid officials. We can apply this across the board to every sport. The idea they don't have full-time paid officials, they don't have full-time paid umpires to call these games. And Harrison, I've talked to some different SEC coaches. They're like, dude, we're seeing some guys umpiring games we've never fucking seen before. Like, who are some of these guys? They're not even guys that you've seen in like years past across the league. So I don't know where they're finding some of these guys. I don't know where they're getting them, but this is a real issue. And the bottom line is this. I think if nothing else, we can all agree the best conference in the sport deserves better than what we've seen. That is the most obvious take of all. The best conference deserves the best umpire.
And it feels like we haven't had a history of this at all. Like, this is just out of the blue.
I mean, I've always been one. I've never met an umpire I liked. Umpires are just whatever. But yeah, and listen, I will say this. The game's gotten so much faster. The players have gotten better.
Pitches have gotten
we've
sharper.
And we've got so many different replay angles. And like being an umpire is harder than it's ever been from the standpoint of like we can nitpick them so much more now. But again, even more reason to go out and like really train guys and get full time. It's almost like the SEC. Sankey's a legend, man. Sankey's that dude. But it's almost like they feel like they know they can take the cheap way out. Like, these fans will get over it. Like, we don't have to pay these guys full time. We don't have to make this a priority. But it's an issue, man. Like the umpire, the conference just deserves better. It's that simple. The conference deserves better. So, anyways, that being said, we could spend all day on this. Harrison, before we get out of here, let's talk the midweek. We do have some notable midweek games. Vandy travels on the road to Louisville. Mizzou hosts Kansas, like you mentioned. How about Bama going on the road to a top 20 Troy team? Texas hosts our friends over at Lamar. I would expect, I guess Micah will be down at that one, our good friend Micah. Texas A&M travels to Houston. Harrison, your thoughts on the midweek, and I think especially interesting here, Florida hosting South Florida when they've got Texas on Thursday. So kind of interesting there. Thoughts on the midweek as a whole, though?
Yeah, mini midweek slate, but I still think an impactful one when you speak of, two top 25 matchups with Vanderbilt and Louisville. I think Louisville's a really competitive, good team. You're having to travel to Louisville, not too far, but still play on the road after, a big weekend series win when you're using, a bunch of different guys and, your three starting pitchers that are just some of the elite, I think, rotations in the SEC for Vanderbilt. The concerns around the offensive production, I think Louisville's a lot more offensively inclined to score than Vanderbilt. South Florida, I think is an interesting one. And maybe it's a trap game for, the struggles that we've seen Florida have as a midweek team, let alone, you said before, traveling out to Texas and playing, which they're probably going to leave Thursday morning even, so just kind of a short week with that could be kind of a spooky, kind of sketchy one. But the big one, Chris, for me, Alabama traveling to Troy, to Riddle Pace Field, Chris. I think Troy, I think they're going to be a deep postseason team, and the fact that they have tools and, guys and a very, very good head coach in Skylar Meade to make a run. And the way that Alabama's playing right now, give me Troy in a 7-4 game.
That's a good pick. Yeah. I mean, I wonder how many of these midweek games actually get played.
Is it supposed to be bad weather?
Well, I'm just from the state. This is where we've reached the time of year, Harrison, where it just seems like
sometimes they need to be played, remember?
No, for sure. We've reached the time of year where it's like, I think sometimes that these teams aren't shedding a tear if a midweek gets canceled. We'll put it that way. It depends on who you are, right? Like some teams are really itching to play the midweek. By the way, another one to note, Harrison, Tennessee gets Indiana State, the Sycamores.
Not the Indiana State of old.
Yeah. Harrison, when your roster gets gutted by the portal, that's typically going to happen. So
yeah, but I'm telling you, Troy Trojans, watch out. I think
I love the pick.
They cause some havoc in regional. They're going to cause some havoc, and I think upset Alabama here. Sorry to our friend Dave Shoemate, friend of the show, colleague of the show, but I think it happens, and I think it's on the backs of just their offense. They have 4 guys batting over 300. They got Blake Cavill who's batting over 340. They have production in the offensive lineup, and they've got dudes to the mound, and Skylar Meade knows how to use the right guys at the right time. He's a surgeon of a head coach, and, one of the youngest, hottest head coaches in the game.
Harrison, let's close it out. I know you've put here in the notes. We can close it out with this if you want. Buy and sell in stock really quickly because we're about to hit the 2-hour mark, which this has been a blast. But buy and sell in stock up, stock down. Where you at after the weekend?
Yeah, I'm going to buy some more Auburn stock. I think just because what they proved to do in a weird weekend at Tennessee on the road, but just kind of they're putting the right piece together at the right time. And Butch Thompson is one of the, more slept on coaches in the SEC from a, head coaching ranking standpoint. And, when you're getting, consistent, more consistent offensive production throughout the lineup that they get peaking at the right time, I think buying a little bit of stock in them, not a ton because I think the value wouldn't be there, but I'm definitely buying some more stock in them. Buying more stock, Chris, in Mississippi State. Justin Parker and Mississippi State. I think he's got the program in the right
Dogs are
direction
hot.
for sure. I think the schedule for both Auburn and Mississippi State lines up very well. I mean, when you look at it, Mississippi State, we talked about Ole Miss at home, then at Missouri. I mean, it after just sweeping Kentucky, big opportunity for them, and then Auburn hosts in South Carolina, which they should take 3, and I think they take 2 from Ole Miss possibly. They have an opportunity to take 2, so I think it lines up great for them. And then selling more Alabama stock just because of kind of what I've seen in the past couple of weeks, just the lack of, I think, mid-tier production on either side of the ball. And then I'm going to sell. People aren't going to like it for several reasons. I'm going to sell a little bit of Georgia stock. Just the way that they swing the bat on the road, I think, even though, they're going to a struggling Alabama, and then you're going to play a hungry, just Texas A&M team at home that has some really good pitching. I'm saying for the rest of the regular season, that's stock-wise for Georgia. Postseason, I think, obviously, with playing at home and hosting is going to be great for them and absolutely crucial, but some little bit of Georgia stock.
He just can't help himself when it comes to the Dogs. Harrison, I'm going to buy back some A&M stock. I sold that long ago. It's about time I dive back in on the Aggies.
That was my next one.
I'm going to sell some Tennessee stock. I said before the season Tennessee wasn't going to make it to Omaha. I picked them finish 5th in the SEC. I'm just saying, I'm not a big pat myself on the back guy because, we miss predictions all the time. So, but man, hate to be right about the Vols. I hate to be right about it. So listen, they're scuffling a little bit. Not saying they're not going to turn it around, but selling stock on the idea Tennessee is going to be a back-to-back contender. I will say that. So give me those
pieces,
two.
I think
they got the pieces, but got to start playing better baseball, no doubt. Harrison, let's close it out. Really fun stuff. Again, guys, that's how the postseason's just around the corner when Harrison and I are going 2 hours on the Windup, and we appreciate you all sticking it out with us. Let's highlight a few comments. I said we would really, really quickly. Our guy, Bo Molinari, I agree. We need professional umpires and officials. SEC needs to employ full-time officials. Bo also does not think that Molinari is going to quit. Seems like he needs a CEO. He can coach baseball. He's just not prepared for the circus.
I'm throwing this one up there.
Yeah, go ahead. Throw whatever.
Sam Dunn, SEC Pitcher of the Year.
Sneaky.
You can shut that down.
Sneaky, though.
You can shut that down.
Who should get it?
I'd say either Kyson Witherspoon, Cade Anderson, Anthony Ivinson, Pico Khan.
Liam Doyle might get it.
Liam Doyle, honestly, that's probably the front runner. I should have mentioned that first, but he's not top 5. Yeah. I mean, great pitcher. He's done a really good job this season, but not top 5.
Very underrated, though. Gig'em Bart had to jump on here and remind Kristen Harrison, stay on that side. Gig'em.
Welcome.
I got a weird feeling we're not going to stay on that side and pick Mizzou this weekend. Just saying.
Well, Chris just bought more stock in A&M, so
I did. Keegan, State getting hot. 4-0 since the coach obtained 2-run rule series sweep. Yeah, again, like we mentioned, dogs are hot. Dogs are hot. Jake says Florida might give Texas trouble. Get the Kapala healthy and throwing again could prove to be huge down the stretch. I agree. Florida they just lulled us to sleep early in the season because we have to act surprised now when they make it to Omaha, but nobody should be surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead with that one.
I was just going to say, Brant says LSU blew it. Hard to win on the road. That crowd is annoying. LSU fans are upset.
No lies told there, but I mean, hey, Auburn is for real. That's for sure. Gig'em Bart even saying Ike Irish is legit. That's when you know. And speaking of that, maybe Auburn 2025 is like 2024 Kentucky, maybe. I don't think stolen base wise, but not a bad comparison.
Yeah, not bad at all. Last one, here we go. Did the Aggies break the Vols from Gig'em Bart? I mean, that's what it seems like. They've been scuffling ever since.
Since then, yeah.
Since that run rule no-hit shutout performance, they have been scuffling, which is just wild to say. Ethan, how do you feel about Gage Wood? 4 innings, 59 pitches, 9 Ks, only.
He was really good.
Yeah, it was fantastic. That whole staff was good.
To be able to, timing-wise, to step up in that role when, Gabe Gackle is really struggling there, it worked out perfect time. When he looks like a dog, dude, on the mound. He was chirping, too, coming off. I mean, he's a good guy for that role. And just, I mean, when he's pitching well, obviously, the depth that they have with that, I mean, come on. I mean, he's a dog on the mound competitor. I was excited to see the kind of the fireness from him for sure. Looking in that dugout and get the energy he had coming off the field, it was really cool to see.
Harrison, that being said, any other closing thoughts? Anything else? Here we go. I want to highlight this because I really appreciate the passion. NCB 5455. No Vandy players in the thumbnail is just foolish. It's all love to Vandy, by the way. It's no hate on Vandy. It's no hate on Vandy.
Hey, Chris loves the Vandy boys. He loves the Vandy Whistler. I've been to Vandy. I like the Vandy
we
boys.
got number love. I'm about to move to the city of Vandy, literally next week. Got number love for Vandy, man. I got you in the next thumbnail. Don't worry. I thought this thumbnail was pretty good today. I did. And by the way, I didn't even mention the reason for the text on the thumbnail. Bloody Sundays, because we are in Bloody Sunday season. Whether it's putting a team out of their misery, it's stealing a series, it's putting the finishing touches on a weekend. Bloody Sundays, kind of the theme this time of year, especially going in the postseason. And Bloody Sundays delivered yet again this past weekend. So, Harrison, that being said, closing remarks, closing thoughts, hell of a show, my man.
Yeah, our longest show today. That's how you said postseason's here. Got a lot to talk about. There's a lot to talk about on off the field, I think, with the umpire situation, head coaching, stuff like that, and the rankings. And I mean, that's why we could sit here and talk for hours. We love college baseball and you're passionate about it. And I mean, it's the deepest league, the best league in college baseball. And we know we're going to get an SEC team. If not, well, we know we're going to probably get multiple in Omaha, let alone one. So it feels good to, cover the best conference in college baseball.
Really quickly, over under 3.5 right now in Omaha. Just off the dome. What's your gut tell you?
Over.
I'm going over as well. I think it'll be half the field again. I feel confident. I don't know what for, but I think it'll be 4. Guys, that being said, we're going to go ahead and close things out. We appreciate you all. Thank you all so much for your engagement, your banter, your conversation, your questions, and just appreciate you all tuning in, whether it was on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, obviously via podcast. We cannot say thank you enough. We're having so much fun as the Windup rolls on. Conference weekend number 9 just around the corner. But, of course, first, the midweek slate awaits us. Guys, again, midweeks matter. They still matter. Do not forget. Again, guys, as always, we appreciate y'all. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. For Harrison Fan, I'm Chris Phillips. This is the Windup, SEC Unfiltered's bi-weekly college baseball show and the best college baseball show on the internet. Don't y'all forget, midweeks matter. Enjoy the midweek, and we will catch you all again on Thursday.